Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. What's happening? Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Happy episode 7. Happy, I hope you're making lots of fun stuff day. What's happening, everybody? Let's go to the chat and see who's hanging out. We've got people starting to trickle in. I just hit go. Crossfader, Yadaglow, Monthys, Borelius, Luminatrix, Ralph, of course. Sean, what's going on? Death Slayer, hello, hello. Um, let's see, Hadel or Hadley? No, sorry, yeah, Hadley. What's going on? Mr. Matt Dog and Cypher. Typo, what's going on? Uh, Sulk, hello. How's it going, everybody? Good to see you. So we'll do a hello, let some people start trickling in. Don't really have much in the way of news today for any special kind of announcements of any kind. Um, if you're in the Chicago area, there's a meetup tonight. If you're not already supporting on Patreon, then tomorrow's going to be another episode of the bonus live stream. The Let me think of other news. I mean, there's going to be some really fun stuff. There's a really fun thing that I'm working on with someone else that I'm looking forward to showing everybody, but that's a little ways away, and there's going to have to be a lot of editing on that one. So I know no dates on that one. So hey everybody, dude, what's going on? Jedi, Leo, Scott, Brian. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. So start getting those links together. Get ready to start posting them. Clear, Dennis. Remember, I need to see the artist name. If I don't see the artist name, we are not addressing it. Although I do like just the written questions. It does help a little bit if you write the word question or something in caps at the beginning. It just jumps out of my eye. It doesn't pop up a special thing, but it just makes it easier to see. Otherwise, you guys might be having conversations amongst each other. Um, Apparently Beeple is doing an AMA on Friday on Reddit. That's fun. At 2 Eastern Standard Time. That's cool. Um, yeah, is there anything else to cover? I don't really think so. I think we're just ready to rock. Everything should be good. So I'm going to start the intro and then clip this part out, and then see you guys on the other side. Be right back. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. I'm Chris Schmidt, and we are here to take questions about motion graphics and Cinema 4D and just cool stuff in 3D and 3D animation. So we are ready to go. We've already got people in the chat room already asking questions. We got lots of people. I already said some hellos. So let's go and start checking out some links or some questions. First of all, I want to address somebody. I missed the question somewhere earlier, but somebody was saying, "What about the Game of Thrones building on animation?" Not sure how to tackle it. That is just a huge undertaking. I'm sure there's a big old studio that spent a lot of time building that stuff and rigging it and whatnot. There's no like, hey, throw it in the cloner and do this technique thing. That's just a lot of manual animation. Every single tower building on the tree, everything is a unique rig that would have to be built. Not exactly something we can tackle easily, and especially not in a live stream. J-Man has a link. It goes to Instagram. So let's go ahead and click on that one and share the screen here. Let's see, what do we got? I got to be careful about audio playing in here. I don't know when the audio is playing through really loud. But what do we got? We've got something from Bridge and FX, or Bridgend FX. So we got like these little cup shapes traveling around inside of a sphere. They're pretty neat looking. And then we got like kind of this really shallow depth of field. Um, the jerky way that everything's moving around is really fun. I think there's actually something that we can extract from here. Like this is supposed to be another rapid fire episode, so we're not going to be spending too long on any one thing. But let's see if we can't get something somewhat along these lines. So why don't we go ahead and make a shape of some sort here? I'm going to make a I'm trying to think of something we do a little different. I mean, they have a sphere. A sphere would be easiest, but I think maybe we'll just make it two-dimensional. In fact, instead of a plane, why don't we make it a cube? So this is going to be a surface, and things are going to be traveling around on the top part of the surface. I'm going to go ahead and make this way bigger, 2000 by 2000, still only 200 tall. And now I'm going to make a second cube, and let's see, a couple details. How should we do this? Yeah, okay. We're going to make a cube, and we're going to make it dynamic. So we're going to add a couple things, actually. Why don't we make a floor? And the floor is at 0, 0, 0, and that's fine. And we're going to temporarily turn off this box, and then we've got our one cube here that's going to be sitting there. So let's go ahead and make the floor dynamic and this cube dynamic. Select both of them, right-click, simulation, or rigid body. So now that should fall to the floor and just kind of sit there. Good start. Let's go ahead and grab both of those, and we're going to give it no bounce and no friction, so it can kind of freely slide around on it. So now that that is happening, we could go ahead and probably trap it inside a smaller area of some sort. Not necessarily necessary, but let's go ahead and create another cube. T for scale, I'm going to scale it pretty big, something like that. Let's go ahead and right click and add a Cinema 4D display tag, and let's say use, and I'm going to change it to line. So now you can see we've got this invisible cage, and I think it's really important. You could just visually hide it and be like, that's about that size, but I've often done those types of rigs, and then something will be happening dynamically. I'm like, why is that happening? Because there's no visual indication of what was happening, and it really throws me off. In that case, we're going to steal this collider tag off of the floor specifically because I already turned off the dynamic state. And we're going to go to collision, and we're going to change the shape to static mesh so it can actually see the inside of the cube. So now the idea is if we make a simulate particles turbulence modifier, then this should be blowing our object around a little bit. Now it's pretty weak right now, and there's no scale, so let's give it some scale. Let's just jump this up to 55, and as soon as we do that, we see our cube is starting to slide around a little bit. We're going to need a lot more frames, and we can go and see our cube, and it should be sliding around, kind of freely moving. Now we could go and maybe increase our noise here a little bit, so that it's gonna travel around a little bit more. Now let's go ahead and make a MoGraph cloner, and this cloner, we're going to put the cube, and wrong cube. Let's go ahead and rename this one walls. Let's go ahead and rename this one bounce, or I guess it's more appropriate to do slide. So that's gonna be our sliding cube. Put this in the cloner. I'm going to set this to a honeycomb array, and let's lay that flat on the ground. And let's go ahead and decrease our count a little bit until we're fitting inside. There we go. And maybe space them out a little bit more, because next step is to scoot everything up into the air a little bit, and we're going to add some variation in the scale. So let's create a random effector. The random effector is moving the position. That really doesn't matter. I guess I can change your initial state, but let's go ahead and grab scale. I'm going to say uniform scale, and let's go ahead and scale both up and down so we get different size cubes all over the place. If we go ahead and hit play, then they should all hit the ground and start sliding around. So already working pretty well. I like the way that looks. Now, stylistically, I think something that might be fun is if we made it so that these weren't turning and rotating. So let's go ahead into our dynamics tag on our slide cube, and I'm going to go into forces, and I'm going to say I'm going to change the follow rotation to, let's say, 15. You can do really big numbers, but that can start getting a little crazy. They are rotating a little bit. Let's jump out to 55. That should be pretty harsh. I'm also going to go to our angular dampening and set it to, let's say, 100%. Actually, here's a little test I want to do. If we set angular dampening to 100%, can they rotate? And from the top view, yes, they can slowly rotate. Can we go above 100%? Yeah, we can. But I'm just curious if this is going to stop them from being able to kind of rotating at all. And I still think we get a little bit of rotation in there. So anyway, we can go and crank up a whole bunch of follow rotation. Our angular dampening should just kind of stop them from being able to do a big rotation on the outset. But it might also stop them from returning. So I'm actually a little reluctant to do that. Now, let's go ahead and crank this up crazy high just because I want to see if it gets twitchy. So now okay, 100 is apparently the max on there. But you can see they do a little bit of rotation, but I'm just going to, that's good enough. They're going to be sliding around and doing their own thing here. I like that. Now, they are bumping into each other directly, which is potentially fine, but we need at least a little bit of space in between them. So let's go ahead and grab our dynamics tag, go to use a margin, and let's go ahead and put in a fairly large margin so we can guarantee we're seeing something. So now the hope will be, let's look at this perfectly from the top. That margin is not doing anything, so maybe it's size increment. So I'm going to change this to 25. There we go, size increment, not margin. I always mix those two up. So now there's a size increment to 25. You can see they can't quite touch each other. There has to be at least 25 units between them. Potentially there's 25 units on one and 25 units on the next one, so they're 50 units apart. But visually, I just didn't want them quite to touch each other. So that already is working well. Quite happy with that. So with this all sliding around, what would be the next thing? Well, first of all, I mean, if we didn't want any rotation here, potentially there would be a way of doing that. My idea there, and this might be worth it. Let's go ahead and spend a little bit of time because I think we're getting some good details here. I'm going to go ahead and make a cloner 2, and this one, I'm going to tell it that it's not dynamic. And in fact, why don't we go and hide this first one? So actually, I didn't hide it. I just dragged this other shape. So you can see it's actually just making it a wireframe. So now we can look at our second set. And I'm going to tell this I want it to clone. Actually, we don't. No, we do need the random effect. Otherwise, they're not going to be scaled up and down. But I'm going to tell it that I want it to be cloning onto an object, and the object is going to be this cloner. And the cloner right now is cloning onto the surfaces of the other one, but I can tell it to not be viewing the surface or the geometry at all. I can just say I care about the axis of the object. So now the axis of the object is what we're cloning onto, and the hope is if I hit play, unfortunately not. I was hoping that these would follow wherever those go, but they are not. And if I turn off, oh, that's weird. Do you see when I refresh something, it actually did jump into position? That's weird and a little frustrating because it almost seems like it should be working. It just isn't actively. If I turn it off and on, it does. If it doesn't want to work, I don't know of anything we do to fix it. It would be like we can't throw it into a connect object because we need it to be acknowledging those as individual clones. The only thing I can think of that might be like an intermediary here would be if we, I'm actually going to do, here's a neat trick. If I copy and paste that one, I can click on MoGraph swap cloner matrix, and now that turned that into a matrix object. And now that matrix object is going to be cloning onto an object, and the object is going to be our cloner, and that's going to be on the axis. And now the hope is, let's go ahead and turn off this cloner temporarily. The hope would be that this matrix object, oh, that's bizarre. I might have done something. What did I do wrong? Because my initial clone, oh, why did this get set to object mode? Huh. Did I click something in the wrong order? Or copy and paste the wrong one? It looks like I messed up my hierarchy. Apologies for that. We should be able to rebuild it by dropping that out there. Now, oh yeah, Cloner 2 got on the bottom somehow. I don't know how. Oh, I know what happened. Sorry, apologies. I moved one cloner below the other to see if there's an order of operations, but I didn't remember I did that, so I just kind of interchangeably swapped one to the other. So this one is supposed to be the invisible one. This one is not supposed to be dynamic. And now I want this cloner to be cloning onto this one. And now all I want to see is if this matrix object is sticking to it. And you can see actually that this matrix object is sticking to it. So now that that is properly sticking, I'm going to tell this cloner to clone not onto itself, but onto an object. And the object is going to be that matrix object. And now it's a little bit redundant, and it seems like we're getting a single frame of weird refresh. But in any case, we did successfully copy one copy over. But the reason for doing all of those extra steps there is I can go and grab my second cloner here and say, and I already have align clone turned off, which means even though these other ones are rotating a little bit, our next set, this final one that we're actually going to see render, that one is not rotating at all. And since we have that margin, I feel like that we've got a little wiggle room. That was real specific. We probably didn't need to worry about it too much, but there we go. Another important detail I forgot to mention, when we built this wall that we're bouncing off of, we should tell it right away not to be able to render because otherwise we'll see it render there. So let's make sure we can turn that off. Now we've got this. Let's go ahead and turn on an SSAO, and that, so that we can see this stuff actually landing on the ground, although it's really small. If you want, you can actually change the settings on the SSAO. If I hit Alt-V, and click on my viewport here. You want to click specifically on this viewport so it knows which one we're on. We can click on OpenGL and tab open the SSAO, and now we've got things like radius, and I can increase the radius, and I can increase our power, so it becomes a little bit more intense, and we can see we get that little bit of natural ambient occlusion going, and things like depth range and whatnot. So now we can just see a little bit of separation in the viewport. It doesn't do too much, and it's as powerful as you want it to be. So now we've got all these sliding around. That's working really well. I'm quite pleased with that. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save because we haven't done that yet. Episode 7, scene files, and let's go ahead and give this a quick save to sliding cubes, I guess works. 1A sliding cubes. Okay, cool. And keep in mind, when I save any scene files, if you're a member on Patreon at the engineer level, then you get all the scene files at the end of the episode. But in any case, we've got this playing and sliding around, all working really well. Now let's go and reintroduce this original cube we made back into it. And we got the floor. I don't actually want to see the floor either. I'm going to make that completely invisible. Now, if we can get this working, and that's a big if, I'm going to make a R20 volume builder, and we're going to drop in this kind of floor box. You see it's going to turn into a big old fat voxel. Now, this is a pretty big scene, so I'm going to actually increase the size of our voxels. That's probably too much. Let's try 25. And now I'm also going to drag in our cloned cubes in. And now you will see that we've got a slight problem where only that first one is getting cloned in. We can try a couple things. First of all, let's see if we can drag it in this way. Nope, looks like still only the first one is being dragged in. Let's go ahead and grab this entire thing and put it into a connect object. And we don't have to weld, so we'll turn that off. And let's try putting, I'm going to remove the one I dragged in, and let's try putting that as an entire child. And it seems to not like that either. I have gotten this working before, but it's a pain. Use mesh points? No. What is it that I've done to make it see a cloner like that? Render instances. Oh, let's go to regular instances. That might actually single-handedly have been the problem. Yeah, okay, that was single-handedly the problem. I was doing render instances, and I should have just been on regular instance. But in any case, we can now see that we have our cubes, and they're sliding around on here. Now, obviously, we don't want them being a union, we want them subtracting. There we go. So now we're taking this big bite out of it as it's traveling around. So we need a better resolution. So let's drop this back down to 10. So, I guess it's a lot, but it's not necessarily too much. And now we hit play. We're going to see these sliding around, each of their individual shapes doing their own thing. And that's actually working pretty well. Actually, something that's interesting is I would kind of like the different heights. Like if a cube is bigger, I'd like it to go deeper. But gravity is pulling everything down. So if I want to emulate that effect, what I would actually do is grab our floor and flip our. This is gonna be weird. I'm gonna flip our floor upside down, 180 degrees, and I'm gonna pull our floor up into the air. Let's go ahead and make it visible for a second. So now you can see it's up here. Now what I actually would like to do is move it so that these are probably pretty low like that. So something like that, and it might not be quite low enough. But I'm gonna hit Control D. And let's go to our dynamic settings, Controller Command D, dynamic settings. We've got our gravity. I'm going to say negative gravity. So gravity is pushing up. So it should fall up onto that floor. And just so we can see things clearly, let's turn off the Ronoy fracture and let that hit play. Whoa. What is going on there? All right, let's give this a quick second. I'm going to turn off all that. We don't need to worry about it. Why are those falling down? Is it intersecting the floor? Oh. It might be intersecting. Yeah, it's intersecting the floor at the time of creation. I was already animating. So yeah, I don't want to move that up a little bit like that so it's not intersecting any of them. And now they won't shoot down. My fault. And now they can fall up onto the floor. So we have different size cubes in theory. Did our effect? Oh, I turned off our effector at some point. Also my mistake. Okay, that effector is turned back on again. Once again, our floor may be intersecting, and it is slightly. Just pop that up there. Alrighty, now that should be working. So now we can go and check out our final cubes and hit play, and you see they're going to fall up into the ceiling. So they actually all should be interesting. Double interesting. Oh, okay. Look, here's another detail I did not know. When let me talk through it for what I just realized. We had a random effector, and the random effector was affecting all of our cloners and our matrix object. And what the cloner was doing is shrinking some of these cubes down. But then this one, I thought we also had to have the random effector in it, but it was taking it and shrinking them down even more. And then our cloner was cloning onto that, and because this is referencing our first one, it was taking on the attributes of the first cloner and then doubling the effect with the random effector. And then we were applying the effect again when we cloned our cloner onto the effect onto the matrix object, and then it was shrinking even more. So you can see every time it was shrinking it or making it bigger on every single one. We actually didn't need that. All the scaling is coming in naturally from that very first one, so we don't have to worry about those parts. So there we go. Now they are all falling up into the ceiling. So now you see we get our different height variations. And now that we're getting that, we can go and grab our original cube, scoot it up enough so it's actually touching all of them. We want them touching at least a little bit on every single one. But now when we turn on our volume, they're going to be taking the bytes out. And I'm actually going to hide this one now because I don't need to see it. Let's let these figure themselves out for the initial little bit. It's kind of weird where some of them weren't appearing right away. But now you can see some of these pits are going very deep and some of them are very shallow. And now everything should be sliding around, correctly moving. And yeah, it's working quite well. I am slightly worried that the floor is intersecting again. No, it's not. I'm not sure why it did that. Some of them are still falling away. That is bizarre. Like we are definitely below it, but some fell away and then had to move up. That's not the way I would think gravity would work. I mean, gravity's just turned on to negative 1,000, so they shouldn't start naturally falling down. I'm going to ignore for now because I want to get to more questions. But anyway, the point being is now we've got this nice cube. We've got all these cubes floating around inside of it. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save as number B. And yeah, then of course we take our volume builder and we throw that into a volume mesher. And then bloop, we get our final geometry or something akin to some final geometry. We see we get some nice rounding on here. We have a lot of options with our cubes. Like we could grab these cubes and stylistically, if we wanted, we can go and put a fillet on them. It's going to round them out quite a bit. We could also not put the fillet on there, and we could, inside of our volume builder, do something like create a smoothing layer. And this is going to smooth that out quite a bit. And it's too much, so let's go ahead and pull it back significantly, but we get a little bit of rounding on there, take those edges off. And potentially we could be cloning additional things, additional details. I guess a fun detail might be, the way it's moving up and down, I don't know if that would work too well. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things we could do too. I can copy this entire cloner, and the secondary cloner, I could just grab these cubes and say, you know what, I want some smaller cubes, and those are going to be the inverse of what we had, and we could even tell these to be rounded, so we can round those out. So now you can see that we have one shape being added, the other shape being removed, and now we've got these little these little indentations moving around, and they should all go and be traveling exactly where our dynamics is telling them to travel. And they just kind of float there in the air, and they will take out this bite. And they're dynamic, so these will actually, as one shape gets near another one, it should, let's see, that one's moving the quickest, but it should hit and kind of bounce off of it. In theory, actually, we could put some bounce back into our dynamics. This is running quite slowly, obviously, because we're doing a lot of volume things. But if I were to turn that off, we should see these moving very, very quickly. And we could make sure that we're not make sure we can make them bouncy. We can go and grab this cloner, which is the only dynamics that are really doing anything. I could add a bunch of bounce on there. Let's do 99% bounce. So now it's a hit each other. Yeah, actually, it's kind of fun, like bing, 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 bing. And then we don't need them to have quite as much of a margin around if we don't want to. So I can set that down to 10. So now they can get pretty close to each other. Not quite touch, but pretty close to each other. I'm going to set the gravity up higher because I just don't know why it's doing that. And it shouldn't affect anything else. It should just have the gravity affect them quicker. Something that's actually a little bit strange is I feel like we're still seeing a little bit of rotation in here. And I didn't think we would see that. Now, we might be able to just override that. I'm going to grab, actually, let's grab the, I'm going to tell this not to align the clone on the matrix object. Does that scale? Ooh, align clone seems to stop it from scaling. But in any case, if I were to grab both of the cloners and add a MoGraph plane effector, this might or might not work. I don't want to affect the position, but I do want to affect the rotation. And I can set the rotation to 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to say I want it to be an absolute rotation. So now this should be, in theory, forcing them to not rotate. I'm looking. I'm not seeing any rotation. I don't guarantee it, but I think that there isn't any rotation. So yeah, after the first couple frames, you'd want to ignore the first few. But I really love the way these are like bouncing around now. It's really fun. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a quick save. Let's go ahead and turn these on. And yeah, you can see our final shapes. I think I'd probably want to maybe even scoot this big old cube up a little bit more just so we get that intersection on these small ones. So the deep ones can go deep, the shallow ones can go shallow. You can see the radius here is big enough where they're actually, some of them can blob into each other. So once again, that just goes in stylistically into our margin. If we set our margin up to 15, that might be enough to keep them from intersecting. Right there, not quite, but once again, that's also a push and pull we have with our voxel size. If we make our voxel size half the size, it's going to sharpen everything up a lot. And then even where those were colliding, it would probably clean them up. So yeah, now we end up with this. Of course, you got a crazy high poly count. In an example like this, there's a good chance that we could add some adaptive range in there, and it can actually create a lot fewer polygons. And it just by ticking up one, all these big flat areas will dramatically decrease our poly count. It's not actually going to speed you up in the viewport because it's still doing all the calculations. In fact, I think it's having to do more calculations to do a cleanup algorithm. So it might actually play back slower, but you have a lot fewer polygons in the scene, which depending on the way you're rendering might make a difference or not. But yeah, I think that is pretty fun. Keep in mind that the smooth layer is a hog, so that's going to probably be slowing us down significantly. Like that's like half of our frame rate, the smoothing layer. So using that one sparingly is a good idea. And yeah, we've got all these bouncing around, and the dynamics and physics are really fun, especially when we turn this off and we can actually see them bouncing around. Bing, 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 bing. So this at speed, I think would actually be pretty fun, and just based on a single turbulence, all the animation being driven just by turbulence. So pretty fun. All right, I want to do more questions. That one was fun. I felt like there's a lot of good information, but I did want to jump around. So we're going to be jumping in. If I didn't, there's been a lot of chat, so feel free to repost your question if you didn't. But right now I can see a couple people chatting down here. Let's see. For everybody in the chat, I mean, I checked the chat, especially when I'm having some sort of a problem, but was there a technical problem? What was that? I mean, people might have had an answer to me that when I rearranged them by accident and I didn't notice it right away. So, level bevel is, what are you saying? Not your typical question. It'd be fun to watch you try and tackle a functional rocket lasso with spline dynamics. In episode 0, when we were kind of talking through the show, I think we tried to make a lasso, and Cinema was not cooperating. So it's not something I'm going to tackle right now because I feel like it's a very technical, specific question. So it makes it so I'd be spending a lot of time on it. It's a fun idea, and I would like to do some more of it. In fact, I'm trying to do some more pixel animation stuff, which I've been having a lot of fun with. So I was working on this pixelated, or I've got the rocket traveling. I was literally doing this before the stream, and I'm rendering it out at a really low resolution. And this is not ready yet, but you can see here that it renders really quick, and you go and view it at like 800%, and then I hit play, and I'm getting these really fun like pixelated things. All the backgrounds, everything, it's not working quite yet. So this is just like in progress, but I was going to be doing a couple fun little things there. So yeah, I'm definitely got some more rocket stuff going. Guitar Boy is linking to a GIF. So let's see what we got. Oh, noodle extrusion. Interesting. I feel like, and this is probably from one of those like how it gets made, like factory type of things. I like how it's just like a little blade that spins around. Cut, 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 cut. Yeah, I think we might be able to tackle something like this. Now, we are going to be faking it. We're not going to do this for real because I can't. Like how like because there's essentially you're pushing like a fluid, a really stiff fluid through there, and we are not going to do anything like that. It would be insane. But the idea of some sort of extrusion, let's see, yeah, the idea of some sort of extrusion here, I think that would actually work pretty well. Thanks for all the questions, everybody. We're getting tons of them in the chat. It is absolutely awesome. Let's go ahead and make a smallish noodle, and let's go ahead and double the rotations. That seems about right. And then, how would those noodles actually look? I guess it travels. Is it two? It might be two opposing helixes. So we take this one and hit R for rotate, spin a little bit. We want to spin this one 180. And then we've got two different spirals. And then we don't loft between them. I think we loft, let's see, I'm going to grab these and put them in loft. I don't think it will work. Oh, actually that does work. Okay, I didn't think it would work, but it does. Cool. I thought, and maybe it would be a way of doing a different type of noodle, but I thought we'd have to take one and put the radius down to 0. Like that, and now do this kind of spiral. So it's kind of like two different things, but honestly, it's just kind of the same idea, just spinning twice. Now it does spin double what I thought it would. So, or maybe actually, maybe shrinking the radius. No wait, I accidentally only returned on one. There we go. That seems to work. I think we're just spinning around too many times now. So let's cut that back in half. I guess another 360 would probably be good. So yeah, there we go. It's about a noodle there. We can go to our loft shape here. Let's get this as low poly but clean as we can. So more segments around there would be good, but we don't need all those extra subdivisions in between. And now we get this nice helix going. That's looking pretty good. This is, by the way, one of my favorite types of noodle. Okay, so we got that going, and ultimately we're going to want this to have some thickness. So we would go and, if we're going to do it kind of parametrically, we can go put this on the cloth surface. Of course, is traditionally a way of doing it. Don't subdivide here, but add on some thickness like that. And kind of interestingly, every other one is spinning up and or down, so it pinches in or out, which actually is logical, but a problem. That's a surprising problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. If we were to make this editable, letter C, editable, and select our polygons, you'll actually see that every other ring faces the other direction because we're actually seeing the underside as they loop from one side to the other. Kind of an unexpected problem. Now I'm curious if we were to shrink this down to 0, 0 and make that editable. That is all consistent then. So maybe that is a better way of spiraling around. So if I were to do 720 times 2, does it mess up the look of the noodle? I kind of think it does, honestly. We could do that. That was really sharp. Now, is that actually kind of accurate to what the noodle is, or is that not? Sorry to get real specific here, but I feel like it matters. Yeah, I think it's just, it doesn't travel this way. It's interesting, the two different forms, because if I do this one, it's all consistent, which is good. But I think the reality of it is that they would be alternating like this. So when we do the thickness, I guess what we might have to do, this is funny, but we can use a volume builder. Let's go and grab a volume builder. We're going to put this into that, and it's pretty tiny, so we're going to drop this down pretty small. And let's go and grab the volume mesher and put that inside. And you're going to see it's going to look really funky and wonky there. But what we need to do is click on our volume mesher and start increasing our voxel range threshold. You see it's actually kind of giving it thickness. And now thickness is just kind of based on the center point. So now they travel up and down. So once again, volume mesher for the win. We could subdivide that a little bit more. We could probably throw in a smoother. The smoothing, by the way, when you start adding the smoothing in, it completely obliterates our voxel range. So we'd have to, actually that does kind of cause a problem there. The smoothing doesn't work in this instance very well. We can't smooth that out here. We could make a smoothing deformer, and we could do lots of smoothing that way. It's working all right. And I mean, there's various things we could do if we wanted to thicken that up. We could probably put a second loft in there and maybe pull this one down so that you see that introduces a little bit more thickness that way. without having to increase the volume. So we could subdivide that more, but I'm going to go ahead and call that a noodle. So that is that. So there's a lot of work to just make a noodle. I thought that'd be simpler. So then we'd end up with our die, our general shape that it's taking a bite out of. So what I would do here would probably just be take this shape, T for scale, shrink it down, and we'll just make one little slice out of here. So honestly, we would just grab our volume mesher, copy and paste it, and then make a bool. We could also use a volume mesher on this whole thing, but that might be unnecessary. Let's make a bool, and I'm going to feed it the cube, and it's A subtract B usually, so I can put that in. Let's hide this one. And if I grab this one and pull it backward, you're going to see that we can get the kind of the extrusion of what the noodle would be. So it's kind of like that shape. That's how it's actually cutting it out. Now, if you want to make clean bools along these lines, I saw some people talking in Slack earlier about bools. The trick I've been doing with bools to make them nice is to turn on hide new edges. And then you can also say, actually, it's just turn on hide new edges. And now you get this very clean piece of geometry where it does n-gons for it. But actually, it makes it so that as you feed one bool into another bool, you actually do get cleaner meshes because you're not introducing all these triangles until they need to exist. Okay, cool. So that is that. Now that's our die. That would be one of the die. We could grab our cube and shrink it up a little bit if we wanted to. Let's go ahead and maybe drop it to 75 by 75. So what we need to do is make it so that as the noodle, the visual noodle, as it kind of would animate through this thing, and let's find them like right there. That's the actual place where it goes. So that's where it matches. So if we were doing this accurately, as it moves forward, it's also spiraling. Now, I don't actually know what that amount is. And I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do it. Because if we make a tiny espresso rig, it could be fun. But then there's a certain moment I want it to turn dynamic and fall away. And that wouldn't be the case here. I mean, I can't even think of a way of doing it other than, I mean, it's espresso, and then maybe we can activate the dynamics tag. I don't know. We're just gonna brute force it right now. So that's a start point right there, which is fine. I hit Alt G just so it's in the group. Let's just name this a noodle, and now we're going to go and make espresso on here. And what are we going to be doing with it? Well, we want to worry about the Z position. So as the Z position of the noodle, so let's go and grab the noodle in. Let's go and grab the coordinate, grab the Z position, drive it. As that is moving forward, we want to, and you know what? Honestly, it'd probably be a good idea to put a child in here, and I'm going to spin this one. So this will be our rotation. Rotation. As that's spinning, okay, R for rotate, we can spin a little bit, and you see it's B. So it's rotation B is what's going to be spinning. So let's go ahead and drag that null in. I'm going to say I want to control the rotation B. So two different ways of getting the parameter in there. So now all we have to do is create a range mapper, right click, new node, espresso, calculate, range mapper. So we're going to now feed in the Z position and output something for the rotation. So we're going to be inputting not huge numbers, but larger numbers. So if I grab this and pull it, let's see how far we move it. So you can see I'm going from, if the noodle was completely outside of it, it's negative 200. If I was completely in front of it, it's about 0. So the noodle's about 200. So 200 seems like a good unit. So we're going to go anywhere from 0 to 200. What are we going to output? Well, I want to output some degrees. So let's put degrees. So right now, as we move, we're going to see it's going to spin as it's passing through. And you can see it's actually already doing something pretty well. I'm not even sure if it's spinning the right direction. But definitely, I'm not sure if it is spinning the right direction. Even that's hard to tell. Because when it lines up, as it backs up, I think it is spinning the correct direction, but not enough. Now, the thing is what I'm inclined to do is just eyeball this. So we're saying it starts at 0 and it's at 0. So let's make sure at 0 that the output rotation is something that matches. So right now it's a perfect matching thing. So I'm going to spin it to right about there. So negative 55. So now as we move to 100, it's rotating, and we need it to have spun a certain number of times and match again. I think we need to go higher on the rotation. I'm going to do that, but I don't think that's high enough. I'm going to grab our upper limit and say 410. Now let's move it in. And if it's not perfectly matching, then we need probably another 360 on there. So I'm going to say plus 360. Apparently 360 is... Oh, this noodle might not end on the same amount. So let's do that. Closer, but a little too much. So let's go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to pull down until we get one counter rotation. And one of these is going to match. Not that one. That one is... I think maybe still too much. It might also be too little. I might be thinking backwards. And when I'm designing these kind of things, like we could do the math and figure it out directly, but I oftentimes just eyeball and guess. I think we might need more, so I'm going to spin 1, 2, and now we'll get to some new ones in the other direction. 3, and push. Ooh, there we go. Look. So now as I move this, the noodle is counter rotating the exact amount I need it to come out of the extruder. And then, right at this moment, our blade would come through and chop. And then, at that moment, I would want it to turn dynamic. Now, I don't actually want this directly to turn dynamic. I would want some sort of parent to turn dynamic. So, let me think. I'm going to make a... This might... Hopefully it doesn't get too weird. No, the child... Okay. I'm going to make a cylinder, and the cylinder is going to be the dynamics for the noodle. Obviously, it's not matching the noodle very well, but I want something that runs quick. So let's go ahead and match the noodle and drag it over. Potentially, we could just tell it to calculate as a cylinder, but I'm not sure if that actually still runs quickly. So there we go. That becomes our dynamic object. Now, I want to drop this noodle into the cylinder and have it work, but we've now moved the cylinder over into a weird position. So I'm actually going to make a null, and that null is at 0, 0, 0. So if I make the null a child of the cylinder and I make the noodle a child of the null, nothing should change. It should be working. So now that noodle is independently moving forward, and our cylinder is not being affected. And we can tell the cylinder not to render, but we do want the stuff underneath it to. I tend to not like doing that, but we should be able to rewind. Actually, I never recorded. So let's go ahead and do a recording. That's where it should end, so I don't know how long it'll take. Let's say 45 seconds. I'm going to record the Z position and then rewind all the way, and now the noodle should be right at its start position. Oop, don't move the cylinder. I recorded the wrong one. We want to make sure we record this. Animate Z. So that's where I want to animate the Z. So record there, and now... Sorry, at the time of 45, record that position, rewind, and now pull this backward until we're at the very start of the noodle, and we'll do another keyframe. So now that should automatically go forward and stop. Honestly, it would probably want to be a constant range, so let's go and select those and say linear keyframe. So that should linearly move forward. Because we have an espresso rig, the rotation automatically matches. But now, as that travels over, suddenly the cylinder would become a dynamic object at this time. So let's go ahead and add actually we want to be at the time of 0. So let's right click and we'll add a simulation rigid body, and it is automatic is fine, but I'm going to tell it that's a moving mesh, and I'm going to tell it that the dynamics are off so they're off at 45, record, and I can hold down Alt as I move so the keyframes aren't actually changing, and I'm going to say on and record. So now that it's not dynamic. So with any luck, this will, and I haven't saved this yet, dangerous. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and name this to A, and we'll call it Noodles. Noodle cuts. So with any luck, this will play forward and the dynamics will take over and it'll fall away. Cool. Actually working, it's shockingly well. So, yeah, we should be able to let that go and then chop and it falls away. And, yeah, it would just be repeating this process. Now, I'm trying to think if there'd be any way of like cloning it so you could do a whole series of these, like doing it again and again and again. Honestly, nothing's coming to mind. I wish it was, but it's not. Um, Now, everything is keyframed. We've got Espresso running, and Espresso might stop it from working. Because if we were to put this into a cloner, and let's say that we made a train of them, so we would do a couple of them cloned backwards. So each subsequent clone is pushed backwards. It already matches really well, so that's cool. Um, and we'd want that to have been, I mean, that's zeroed out, but we want this actually to be moved forward this amount. Boom. So now it should be matching. But if we hit play, they're all going to be traveling forward. They're all keyframed, but then, yeah, those will stop doing their thing, and then they'll all turn dynamic at the same time and fall away. It's really weird how that's... Why is that choking on this early part? I mean, once again, that could be the espresso. I don't know. No, it's not the espresso. They are all spinning, but that's because they're all just identical clones. Now the trick would come in if we could offset our keyframes. So right now, let's see, there's a parameter for that. Right now the time is set to play mode, but I don't want it to loop. I don't want it to play. I want it to be offset. How do I offset each time? I think this is an absolute one. If I were to push this forward or backward. If I push it backward, they all move, so that's not what I want. Play is fine. I guess all I want to do is add a offset. So I'm going to say MoGraph step effector. And I don't want it to control, I want the spline to be linear. So let's right click on the spline, say linear spline. And I don't want it controlling scale, I want it controlling, I want it controlling time. So it takes 45 frames for each one to animate. So I'm going to say 45 frame offset. And let's hit play. And it looks like it's spinning backwards. So maybe we need a negative. So now they're all pushed forward. I could probably fix that by offsetting. Shouldn't this be offsetting each one? Yeah, this should be affecting each one subsequently. But it's pushing it forward. Yeah, I'm a little. Like I said, I didn't think we could build it into a cloner. There might be a way of putting it into a cloner, or even spawning. Let me think. If we were to spawn one. Well, okay. Well, here's a thing that might work. No cloner, but if we were to loop this animation going forward, also the cylinder's in the wrong position. I'm going to just pull that forward. Oopsie, what's going on? Oh, yeah, that's supposed to be all the way in the back, not forward. I was like, I did something wrong there. Okay, so if I had to play, it's going to travel forward and then turn dynamic and fall. So if we instead made a second rig, so if I copy and paste this, we'll make it so this cylinder doesn't do anything. And then that one were just to loop. It would go forward and then back and then forward and back. The best way to do that would be Signal, obviously. So Signal is a plugin from Grayscale Gorilla, one that I made or I helped design. So I really do like it. So instead of animating the Z with keyframes, let's go ahead and animate it with Signal. Let's get a quick reference for where it's animating from. So right now it's going from 176, which I've copied, and it's traveling to 12.5. So instead, let's tell Z to be taken over by Signal, and it's going to go from there to 12.5. It already saw the initial one. We can go ahead and say linear animation, and I'm going to now say loop. So that's going to loop there. Now this one doesn't have dynamics attached to it. So let's go ahead and actually I'm going to delete this one temporarily. I'm going to hit Control X to delete. I just want you to see if I hit play, that should go forward, and then when it hits the end, it's going to pop back to the beginning. So essentially we have this infinite noodle scrolling forward and then jumping back. And because we don't see behind the machine, that should automatically work. So now essentially what we need is to emit these cylinders in their final position. So let's delete the keyframe off of our second noodle. Let's move it into its final position, which is right about there. Although it does... oddly, it seems spun a little bit. I'm not sure what I did wrong there. Where is it Oh, I guess it is matching. Yeah, it's matching. Okay, so that's kind of the position in which it would go. And really, we just need that to suddenly emit. So this one, I don't even think we need the cylinder. I'm going to pull this out of the cylinder so we don't even have to confuse those dynamics. And this one is dynamic, and we need it to emit every one particle every 45 frames. Let's go ahead and give this a save as number B. So I don't think we can actually make the basic Cinema 4D emitter emit like that. So if we said emitter and we set that to, let's put it as a child because it should be right where that is. And I'll say 0, so it's exactly there. Pull it out. It's got the same rotation and everything. We could say emitter size of 0, 0. But if we said I want it to emit forever, but right now there's the editor speed and the renderer speed. But here's the problem is you can't go below 1, and we would need it to go below 1. Now, one possible idea would be if we were to keyframe a cloner to start generating more clones. So if we said linear, let's say that we had a count of 1 and the spacing is 0. We also needed this to be offset to wherever the cylinder is. So I'll drop it in the cylinder, 0 that out so it takes on the position. Put it in. Okay, cool. So that should be dynamic right away. It should, oh, it's not because I still have a keyframe. So turn that off. This is just always dynamic. So we hit play, immediately that falls away and we have the next noodle come. So what we would need to do is keyframe the count to go up by 1 every 45 frames. We already used signal a little bit, so this is another perfect opportunity to try and use signal. So I'm going to add signal, and I want to control the count. And I'm going to say that the count should be a linear existence of 1. Actually, it's going to go from 1 to 2. So there's already 1 at the beginning, and it's going to go up to 2 at the time of 45. I'm going to say the playback should be additive. So it's going to go from 1 to 2, then 2 to 3, then 4 to 5. And I just want to see if when we generate a second clone, if the second clone gets created and if the first one is still there. Let's create a floor, pull it down here, and add a dynamics tag to the floor. Save it, and let's hit play. Boom, noodle, boom, noodle, boom, noodle. Okay, there is hope for this, actually, to make a more advanced kind of rig here. So that is falling away right away, which we want it to. But then we have a second one appear really quick. 45 frames. Maybe we do want it at 1. Maybe there just isn't 1 on the first one, so we'll go 0 to 1. So now there isn't a... Oh, no. Why did it make that? Think-a-do. Let's see what the cloner's doing. The cloner says I have 0 clones, and then hit play. Oh! It must be that because we're in integers, this is hitting a like halfway point. So it's going to like 0.5 and then suddenly jumping up to 1. So what we can do, this is cool, hopefully this works, is we have inside of our output a setting that got added in signal 1.5 called step variation. What step variation does is it makes it so that you're only going to whole numbers of a certain kind. So I'm going to say I want whole numbers of 1 because prior to that, actually let's turn this off. If I were to hit play, count, volume, step. Where's our, okay, we're now, you see our final output. Let's hit play. No, that's actually, it is jumping on that. I still think we're jumping on that one. Let's just try it. I'm going to turn on our step variation. Might not actually work. Yeah, it's still 1, 2, 3. It's going way too fast. Our noodles, I thought our noodles were taking exactly 45 frames to go. Maybe that's what I'm getting wrong. How long did it take our noodle to keyframe? Oh, okay. Apologies. I know what I did. Um, Remember we had it keyframed to animate on Z and it's going every 45 frames, but I added signal and signal took over. Signal is no longer keyframing it. But I didn't set signal to 45 frames. I set it to 90, or is at the default of 90. So if we set that to 45 and we set this to 45 and it's going from 1 to 2 additively, we don't need to worry about step. It was creating double the number of noodles that we need. So noodle, or is it still doing something? So we still get a noodle. And another one gets made at the halfway point. So maybe now the problem is happening. Although I don't think it is. Boom, boom. Still twice as many. So I guess maybe we have to cut it in half because we're hitting some sort of halfway point. So let's go ahead and say 90 frames. Why not? Yeah, there we go. Okay, okay, okay. Looking good. Let's add some more frames. This one's fun. So that's going to be infinite, and now this is going to, and both of them are, it's an infinite rig now. These are each going to, that's going to loop forever, and this one is going to go forever. So if we were to just hit play, boom, falls off, boom, falls off, and we're just going to get noodle after noodle after noodle. And it's just working really well. We might want to go and put a little bit of initial velocity on there. So I'm going to say custom initial velocity. We have X, Y, Z. So I'm going to give it an initial velocity of 55, which I have no idea if that's way too much or not. It looks like we want negative 55. So now it gets created, and yeah, it spits it forward. So hopefully it's got kind of that same movement. Honestly, it seems less than what we're spinning. So now yeah, there we go. So now it feels a little bit more like it's maintaining that momentum as it goes forward. It would probably visually help if we put a white material on there. So it's going to carry that through for us. Crank that up. So now, I mean, just for fun, because it's looking so surprisingly accurate, honestly. Let's go ahead and clean up this rig a little bit, and we'll make all 3 of the noodles. So we'll put that in. So now we've got a null, and we'll just call this cutter 1. And now what's cool is because we got such a clean setup, my hope is, let's go ahead and make a cylinder, and we'll spin that around. Make kind of a big cutting blade. We're not even looking at the reference, but let's go ahead and say that we have something like that. So let's go ahead and scoot that over. Yeah, I'll just do that. That's fine with me. So that becomes 1. So I'm going to drop that as a child. I'm also going to copy and paste it. So there's another one. I'm going to grab this cutter, and I'm going to say the cutter wheel. Or is that the right cylinder? Oopsie, sorry. I'm going to copy the cutter and paste it. So that was 1 inside the cylinder and 1 outside of it. So now we want to rotate this 1/3 of 360. So I'm going to do 360 divided by 3. It is 120. And now I'm going to hold down Control and drag a copy of it inside the cylinder. And let's rotate it another 120. So it's going to be 240. Spin around again, and there we go. Now we've got 3 cutters inside of this one shape, and each one is doing their own thing. Now, with any luck, yeah, it's all 3 of them are just going to be working and get created. But, of course, if we have our spinning blade, we'll need those to be offset. So that shouldn't be too difficult. Let's go ahead, and I'm not going to worry about making the cutter blade look nice. I'm just going to go and make a cylinder here. Or I'm going to go and make a cube here, nice and thin, not quite so long. Let's pull this over to the front. So let's say that's our cutting blade. Let's go ahead and make it a color. That is not the right window. That's the right window. Go away, Espresso. We don't need you anymore. We'll go to reflectance, remove, add Beckman. There you go, shiny. There we go. We got our shiny cutting blade. Add a single unit fillet, so we got a little bit of bevel on there. So we got that. Our cylinder is offset, so I'm actually going to 0 that out on 0, 0. Honestly, this rotation doesn't even need to be rotated anymore. So there we go. We got our 3 noodles, and we've got our blade. Let's grab our blade and move it up in the air a little bit, and we can make a null or a cylinder. I mean, honestly, we probably should make a cylinder. Let's make another cylinder. We'll point it forward. And T for scale, and we'll make that longer. And there we go. So we got something for that to bounce off of. So I'll also make this dynamic. We will just make it a collider body, actually. I'll steal that right from the floor. And now we're going to infinitely spin this. So I'm going to right-click, and let's add another signal tag. We've already broken the seal, so let's go nuts. We're going to be spinning this one on probably B again. Yep, it's B. Grab B, and we're going to tell it to cut. Now, we are going to need to time this out specifically. I don't know what that timing is yet, so I'm not worried yet. I'm going to say just over the course of 90 frames, although we did change it to 45. I guess it should spin 360. So every 45 frames, spin 360 is the idea. So it's spinning now. We can put our cutter blade on it. And let's turn on SSAO. And let's make a color for that background one so these things aren't all blending into each other. And then, hey, why not? Let's make a noodle color. Yeah, noodle, 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 noodle. Shouldn't that be filtering down? What's the, oh, I've made that white material. Replace the white material. I'm holding down Alt or Option as I drag, and I can merge it into those other materials. There we go. Everything's just popping out a little bit more. Why don't we make this red a little bit? Okay, cool. Just something that we can see. So now our blade is spinning. So now what we need to do is offset a bunch of these by 45. Now what's cool is we got signal here, so I can grab, not 45, I guess because they're animating, it's taking 45 frames for them to travel. Honestly, 45 is a bad number, but what's cool is we can fix that. What we really want is a nice clean number that we can divide by 3. So let's go ahead and say it's actually 60. So it's actually going to take 60 frames for that to happen. I think the entire rig will just update and continue to work, which is awesome. Oh, we should also have those spin when they spit out, but we'll fix that in a minute. So now we can offset this set by 20. I can grab offset and say I want to offset by 20 units. And I'm going to grab the next, I guess that would be that one. You know what? Let's not do that one. That's the first one. The first one's not going to be offset. The second one is going to be offset by 20 frames. And the third one's going to be offset by 40 frames. So now they're all offset. So now we should have 3 noodles, each coming out at slightly separate times. Which is all good, except that maybe we need the initial, the noodles that are getting pulled out by the extrudes. Maybe this should go down to 0 and 1. Let's see. Were they already offset? Because it seems like. Oh. Okay, I know I did. Remember we saw that the cloner was spitting out twice as many as it was supposed to, so we had to cut the time in half. I forgot to do that. So when I made it 60, this was actually supposed to be 120. So our noodle will come out, and then boom, become dynamic. Boom, yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So now we have our spinning blade. Let's tell that to be additive, so it's constantly spinning. And now it should spin once every 60 frames. So it should be going, oh, wow. It's already lined up. Cut. There we go. The blade obviously could be sharper. Honestly, this should be, if everything was going twice as fast, I'd be a little happier. I mean, because of the way we built the rig, it's super easy to do that. I can say that this should happen over the course of, I guess, we might have to do 0.5s here, but if that could be 30 frames, we could grab these 3, and I can say that they should be happening every 60 frames, and we can grab the, and then the offsets we'll have to fix as well, but we can grab these 3 and tell them they should happen every 30 frames. And then we have our offset. So that's this should be half of the amount offset. So that should be 15. No, that's not true. It should be a third. So it should be 20. And this one should also be 20. And then these should be 10. Those should be offsets of 10. Noodle, chop. There's a little pop there. Pump. Yeah, right there. Frame. So chops the noodle successfully. Travels through. We probably make the blade thinner. It will help as well. Yeah, that one, it's still got one clone. Are they all doing that? "60 frames, 30." It's taking twice as long for them to do it. I shouldn't have sped it up because we were looking good. Now it's just kind of wasting time. So those take 30 frames and they're offset by 10 and 20, which is an extra third. That goes back around to a third. That makes perfect sense. These are good. We can do the initial count, but that doesn't change anything. That just is going to drop those. It seems to be cutting every other single one, but we already know that it needs the time to be cut in half. At least that seemed to. Yeah, now it seems like there's twice as many. Do 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 do. Yeah. One moment. How do I? Here's the problem. Like, I want to hide these two, but because I forced. Oh, actually, these can become visible again because we got rid of the parent. So I can do that. I just want to hide these. Let's just worry about one. We'll figure this out. Didn't I say? Oh, it is a child of it there. It does mess it up there. But I could just turn the cloner off. Just remember to turn that on. Okay, we're back to one. Okay, so. Yeah, it's doing every other one. Okay, interesting. So if it's 60, I want it to go up twice as fast. I would do 30. But as I do 30, that seems strange. Maybe we have to offset it by half the length of time. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I don't have an intuition for this, but it seems like a way of fixing it was just it should match the same amount of speed. It was just offset by half a rotation, and I was fixing it by doubling the amount. It was doing every other one. So really, they should have always been matching the same length of time. They never should have been double. They just need to be offset by an extra half a length. So naturally, this one is supposed to be offset by 15. This one is already offset by 10, so we actually have to offset by 25. And then this one is offset by 20, so it should be offset by 35. I hope that sort of all makes sense to everybody. Noodle chop, noodle chop, noodle chop, noodle chop. There we go. Oh, look at the gorgeous noodles. All right, loving it, loving it. That's looking great. The only thing I want to do is introduce some rotation into the clones when they're created, which is really easy. All we have to do is grab the 3 dynamic cylinders dynamic tag and give it some initial rotation. We already know B is the magic number. I have no idea what the rotation should be, so I'm just going to guess. Let's try 90 degrees, and let's see what it does. Actually, it looks like B is tilting it backwards. So is it not B? I don't know. No good way of telling right there unless we crank up the speed. Oh yeah, okay, now it's going. And yeah, I think we want the opposite. So let's try negative 5555. You see I immediately put a big number in there so I could see it. Yeah, there we go. And actually, look, it seems like it's doing a really good job of continuing the spin. The blade is doing a good job of spinning around. We've got the 3 different cuts. So we got cut 1, cut 2, cut 3. It's actually kind of the opposite. But then we got the blade. I want to thin that out a little bit. Let's make this 3, and we'll make this 12. Yeah. So yeah, a little quicker blade, so we just don't see it intersecting. And the dynamics are going to run incredibly fast because of these being noodles, and then you could have those continue down the path. So I'm actually, I didn't think we'd be able to get this working as well as we did. But yeah, just that simple looping rig, and essentially we create an emitter by telling the cloner to create the next clone, the next clone, the next clone. And then, if this was part of the factory, you would go and make a dynamic cylinder or a tube here. Let's face this on Z, make it a little bit bigger. And then we'd only make this slice 108, slice of 180. And now we can make our tube nice and long. T for scale. Yeah, and you do something like this, and then R for rotate. Bend that down, and now they have someplace to go after they're cut. We don't need our floor anymore. I'm going to steal its dynamics tag and get rid of the floor, and tell it to be dynamic on, collision shape, static mesh. Now, as the noodles get cut, they should be able to fall into our slide and then slide away. And we've got our noodle extruding machine. It'll make noodles forever. Make one big box here so we don't see them getting spawns behind it. Chop, 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 chop. Awesome. We got our noodle chopper. That was fun. It would be nice to make a slightly a shape of the noodles that's just a little bit more dynamic, like a low poly version, so you could actually have them bounce and intersect with each other. Because right now they are just cylinders. And I think it worked well enough, and we're getting really great real-time feedback. But yeah, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's amazing how well that tricks the eye, because like that extrudes and it suddenly looks like it's chopped off, but really that one jumped back inside, and the next one is, you know, just a new emission sliding away. So yeah, pretty neat. There's even a chance where I would do something like make these soft body. Actually, okay, we're going to take a half second and see if we can do it. If we were to grab our 3 cylinders, so cylinder, cylinder, cylinder. If I reduce this to like 12 segments, and let's give it some height segments of like, I don't know, 4. And, oh wait, no. I'm not going to do this. Never mind. I'm not going to do it. Because we'd have to go and put them into a what do you call it? The moving mesh, the mesh deformer. We'd have to put them in a mesh deformer to make them get deformed. But if we did a very low poly thing, we could actually have these be a little bit floppy and bendy, so they could actually still bend, because these are going to be soft like flour. They're pretty much just a flour. So, you know, there could be a little bit of bend. Right now they're quite stiff, but you know, you could do that with a mesh deformer. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to do another question here. Okay, cool. Let's see. All the chats are going to be further up. Or all the questions. So I'm scrolling up further. What do we got? WS Meeks is asking about opening of a pine cone, and I am familiar with the concept, even without clicking the link. It's incredibly difficult because it's almost like fish scales or something, where they just kind of very organically overlay, or like flower petals. I mean, I guess pine cone is practically a flower, as far as the way it's shaped, where like they kind of just magically, organically push into each other. And yeah, I just don't think we're going to get something cool out of it. Sulk is asking if Signal can drive any parameter of an Arnold material. So you can have a flickering effect. Yeah, you totally can. I think we can do this really quick. Let's open up a new one. I'm going to make a cube. Let's go ahead and turn on Arnold. And I'm not going to do anything fancy here, but we've got Arnold, and let's go ahead and make a new Arnold material. Surface. Let's see, I guess a standard surface. By the way, I don't know Arnold at all. So let's see. Base, specular. I'm guessing there's an emission. Yeah, emission. And here's the weight. So we crank that up, and now it is indeed a emissive material. And now we got that. We could make a floor, so we have something to be being lit. T for scale. Create another Arnold material. This could go for anything, by the way. Let's make another standard surface. We'll apply that there. And let's create, I'm going to hit Command B in Arnold, and we'll give the diffuse a couple extra bounces and output a animation, all frames. We do not need a big resolution, so we're going to divide that by 2. Don't worry about saving. So now we've got that material, so we can just go ahead and add signal anywhere. So I'm going to add a signal tag, Grayscale Gorilla signal, and let's add that signal tag. And on top of there, let's go ahead and drag in our weight. onto our signal tag. And when you click on signal, you'll see it actually created a dynamic link over to that particular material. And now that should be controlling it. So right now it's up at 1. What we should probably do is say, well, you want it to be, yeah, you want it to flicker. So it's going to be up at 1, and you see it's maxed out at 1 all the time. So it's constantly 1. But now we can create a noise, and you want a flicker. So what we can say is I want this to go negative up to 1. And honestly, just doing that should work pretty well. We could go and, yeah, just doing that should be pretty good. I'm going to set it up to 3. We crank up our bias a little bit. It should make it, crank it up to the extremes more often. So we're not going to see in the viewport, but you can see right here how this is flickering. And that's, it's staying up, down, up, down. Now where things get interesting, this kind of, right there, that's 1. And here is 0. So you can see it's kind of going between almost full and 0. But where things get more interesting is if we go to advanced, we can say remap the strength of the noise. So right now it's even all the way through. But I could go and select our points and then say soft. We're going to interpret this softly. And I'm going to say most of the time now you're flickering really low. So I actually want the opposite. I'm going to say most of the time you're going to be up really high. You're going to be up near your peak. But if you happen to get to this extreme, then it can go black. So you can see we're flickering really near the maximum. If we want to, we could actually really crank it up. We could do this where it's like flat on top. So it's pretty much always at its maximum. And if we start increasing our bias more, then we're more likely to occasionally get to a point where it really flickers. So we can go and just kind of lay this out and kind of the probability of it flickering. So now think of this as what the light is going to do and kind of finding the balance here. Flicker, 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 flicker. So there we go. So that's looking pretty good. I think that would work pretty well. Let's go ahead and do a quick save on here. So we'll do number 3A. This is just Arnold flicker with GSG signal. So now, hopefully, if I hit render, yeah, so, and I have the demo version here, but you can see it's going to process through, and it's super emissive and bright, and hopefully at a certain frame it's going to get dimmer. Yeah, so you can see right there it got dimmer. We won't be able to see anything until it's kind of done animating a little bit. Now, having said that, there's a couple different things that Signal could control as well, even with this tag the way it is. We were controlling the, and I'll save, that is saved. But in this Arnold material, we're controlling the weight. But what if I said, I don't want to control the weight, I want to control the color. So I drag the color in there instead. Let's put the full color up there. And now inside of the signal tag, we're actually controlling, it's saying it should be white all the time. But then here, I'm going to say, I'm going to feed up to white, and I can go down negative. And now when I hit play, you can actually see our RGB, each of them is flickering independently, doing their own thing. So if I go to my output, you can see our final color here is flickering to a whole bunch of different colors, which by itself is kind of cool. But here's where things get interesting with Signal, is that's a nice big flicker of variation in color. But maybe that's a little too much. I could pull the strength back here. So you can see on our output, that's just, I want to get a little bit more. You can see here that there's a little bit of color variation, but not much. But I could add a second noise. In fact, why don't I duplicate the current one? So I'm going to say duplicate that noise. And here I'm going to say I want uniform manipulation of it. So now you can see that it's flickering, but it's flickering in a uniform way. So X, Y, and Z are the same. So now if I give this a different random seed, we are both flickering the color a little bit independently and a major amount of the color. So when we go to output, we're actually flickering up and down a lot with the brightness, but a little bit of them independently as well. So those two noises added together to combine in a new, more complex way. So we get that little bit of color flickering in there. We could even go and rename this color. So this is now a color tab. Pull this back because I don't think we actually want that much color flicker. But yeah, a little bit of color variation in there. And the major amounts of the black shifting around. So yeah, that should work well there. And do the exact same effect. This is about halfway done, but let's see what we get. So hit play, and there we go. You can see we've got we've definitely got some flickering working there. And then it even pushes further. I wouldn't mind seeing it. We're going to make it a lot smaller. Command V, because we don't need this to be very big. Divide that in half again. There's probably some very simple Arnold. Oh, and I didn't cut our vertical one in half. No wonder. Here we go. That's why the screen size jumped. So that should render really quick. And I'm sure there's settings in Arnold to decrease these render settings. Just not something I play around with too much. Bucket size, maybe, no, I don't know those. But yeah, I'm going to ignore that because whatever. But now we get the exact same effect going here. But I could see from the flickering there that it would have been nice if the flickering was a little faster. So I'm going to double the speed of one noise. I'm going to go a little bit more than double on the other. So we have two different flickery noises going. And then even here on our advanced, on our remap strength, because we're going quicker, we can allow it to stretch out more. Although I wouldn't mind putting a little more bias in there. There we go. So now we should be controlling the color of the Arnold light. And we should get a lot more flicker a lot quicker. Rendering nice and quick. And now we got a little bit of color variation, but mostly the black and white getting pulled down. It's negatively affecting the white color. Hit play. Flicker, 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 flicker. So yeah, really straightforward to be able to control those kind of things. And there's so many cool, interesting, dynamic ways they can be combined. Okay, so let's go ahead and kill that. That's working well. I love flickering stuff like that. I mean, it's one of the first uses I ever did with Signal was flicker a bunch of lights. Okay, back to the chat. Do some more questions. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see, some people are talking amongst each other. I was recently having trouble trying to create the stretch that you see in the cheese when you pull pizza apart. Oh my goodness. You know what? I haven't even clicked your link. Oh, let's go ahead and click your link. Okay, yeah, so yeah, that's awesome. There's a million things I want to say about this. The specifics matter. Now, it's super crazy. Somebody today on Twitter, or maybe it was yesterday, that's clearly a Pizza Hut pizza, by the way. Somebody on Twitter was like, oh, I was playing with X particles, and I got this really nice stringing effect. And I don't know how they did it specifically. I don't know. Let's see if we can... scroll through and oh yeah, Rocket Lasso Live. I don't like it puts out this tweet. I can't delete it from here. That's not me. But I did see it today. I'd be really curious if we could find it by scrolling really fast. Should be pretty obvious when I see it. I think we're getting to around the area. Actually, no, I'm not specifically seeing it now. No, I went back too far now. And Twitter always shows stuff in a different order. I forgot, so it's kind of annoying. And then possibly we could do this with cloth, where you could connect cloth and it can rip at a certain distance when you pull it. Like that could very well work. And then if you were to put that into a, actually that's kind of the intriguing way. I don't think it would tear in this really nice way because we wouldn't have that kind of weight on it. And then the third way is my old Goo Rock tutorial. Goo Rock. I don't know. Goo Rock tutorial. So this is an old tutorial I recorded that you can go check out. So yeah, old school on Vimeo on our old resolution. But yeah, we go and do a whole rig here. Like you see, we model up a rig and then we rig it up with joints. And then as we get to the end here, we end up being able to animate it. Yeah, you can see there's some stretching. And yeah, so now you can see we get these stretches. This drip is animated down. So yeah, it's a really great way of faking the melting effect.
Cool. And some of those could get smoothed out. I think this the rotation on the top is a little clunky.
I mean, there's a
might try-
lot of
I'm gonna go and
potential
tweak the
ways I
animation
could
a
think
little bit, but it's
that
not
there
really breaking anything. It's
might
just like
be
a little
ways
smoothing
of
out
doing
bit.
it, but
I think one thing I didn't do is we didn't texture the caps of the rocks. So
there would be a lot
the
of
center of the rock
R&D.
is generic material. Like
There's
you don't have
there's
to-
one method I kind of want to
we gotta
try
make
really
a
quick. If it
huge
doesn't work, we're
bigger
going
part
to
of the
immediately
rock
jump
with
onto something else
something.
because we could sink a lot of time into this.
So that should be.
So my thought
Maybe the same with the
is,
crystal. Like
if we
can
make
just
a
literally apply the
plane,
crystal material to
I
the
might
top
have to.
and bottom part,
There's a
which
couple
might be
bits on
what
here
we
that
want to do.
my brain is fuzzy on. But the idea I'm thinking is if we have a bunch of subdivisions there, but not so many here, and then we clone, yeah, something like that. That's fine.
Let's, sorry, I want to make sure I'm not.
We
Yeah, okay,
clone
subsurface scattering is still working.
a
I wanna make
bunch of
okay, so yeah, I think it's good enough.
cubes.
On the top and bottom as well. So I'm
Yeah, so let's go and clone a bunch of
Well, you could
cubes.
make a different
And I'm going
material
to clone the
that attaches differently on the
cubes
caps,
onto
so
the
keep
object.
that in mind.
The object will be the plane. The mode will be vertex, the distribution rather. T for scale on the cubes, it will make nice and tiny cubes. And what I want to do is make this a
so maybe these are a little more bulgy instead of so pointy, but that's just an optional thing.
simulation rigid body, but it's not a rigid body, it's a soft body, but it's not a soft body, it's made of clones. Yes. And now that's made of clones, we could make some of them not dynamic. Tricky stuff. Tricky stuff. Not dynamic. Okay, we want some of these clones not to be dynamic. If we hit play right now, we got some clones and they're going to fall on the ground. If I were to make a floor, and we make this floor dynamic, the hope is that we get, yeah, so it's kind of that stack of them all connected. That actually is not behaving the way I want it to. It's very, we have to put the tag on this level and on collision, say, top level. There we go. So now you can see these are all kind of like connected to each other. Connect. Okay, cool. So now we are going to go to MoGraph selection tool. I'm going to select the top. I'm going to select all of these. And I'm going to select the bottom ones very carefully. There. And now I'm going to click on that tag and say invert. So now all of those are allowed to be dynamic and the ones on the outside aren't. And that is acknowledged by going to our dynamics tag and saying those are dynamic, those are not. So now if I play, you'll see the top and bottom are connected. We can hide the original plane. Still need it to clone. But as far as I can tell, seemingly each of these is an individual line. I'm not sure what makes certain ones link to other ones. It's like the distance of them. I'm not sure. But now those are all linked. And they're cloning, which means if we were to animate our plane up, they might lock on. Maybe. Because they're still cloned onto that surface. They're not dynamic. So really, I just need to stretch the plane. I don't know if that will work. But at the time of 0 is when they're calculated, so I don't know if this will work at all. But what I'm going to do is keyframe the height of our plane. So if I hit play there and go to the end and I start stretching this, you see how the top clone and the bottom clone are forced to be attached and the rest are just dynamic. So if I rewind all the way, they're at this position. And if I play, they're locked, but now it's going to force them to start stretching. Okay, so now we've got that going on. Stretch. And then, okay, so now we got that going. Now, I don't know if they're interconnected. What's the best way to figure that out? The best way to figure that out is a slight pain in the butt. If I make a sphere, actually it's not too hard. If I do this and hit play, if I can hit that, okay, it seems like I can hit that one and the other lines are not affected. So each of those could be thought of as their own string. So now we have our soft bodies. Let's go ahead and save this. Stretching cheese. Okay, those are stretching, but now soft body properties are what's super important. I'm going to tell it, don't worry about shear, don't worry about flexion. They're allowed to stretch. You're allowed to rotate. So now, do you see where it suddenly kind of goes like, I'm not sure what's going on there. But we do have a rest length and a tear out length. I'm going to say their tear out length is 200%. So if they get stretched to beyond 200%, I think it would just rip. I don't know for sure. Let's give ourselves a couple extra frames. Did it just rip on the bottom? That's kind of boring. So let's stretch it less. So 122. Let's see. Stretch. Yeah, they seem to have ripped on the bottom, not the top, which is potentially fine. Let's go ahead and jump to our keyframe, and I'm going to make it take a little bit longer to get there, but I'm going to make it go much further. I'm going to tell it to stretch to, oh, I don't know, 2,000. So way more stretching. Let's grab this floor, pull it way down. Hit play. Oh, okay. They just fully, oh, okay. Let's give it time. Pull and stretching. Oh, okay. Well, you see, they didn't break until they hit the floor, actually. That's weird. Pull this down. Hit play. So it's stretching them all. Keep in mind, only the top and bottom are locked in. But now, okay, tear out length. 100 and, I mean, you got to be way, way, way beyond tear out length there. 101. Okay, well, that breaks. Why was 120 so strong? I don't understand. Why is that still successfully connecting? It's like it's fully connected until it's not. But it's almost like we have soft body properties, and you see that will suddenly tear, and they all fall away. So like I want really good stretching ability. Now, the other thing I would like would be a the ability to tear them apart via a field. So we could actually feed a field in and make those stretch, but the I don't trust that either because we have a tear out length in the map. Honestly, I'm not sure where the map gets controlled from. The map might get controlled from the plane, but if that's the case, we can't make it editable because that's what we're keyframing. And then we could create a MoGraph selection field, but I don't think you can feed MoGraph selection fields in here. No, you cannot. So it needs a vertex map. And you can't add a vertex map to a cloner. I don't think. That'd be weird if you could. I don't think you can. Although I am kind of curious, if we did use fields, we've got our initial state there. And then if we were to say, make a spherical field, and then say, add, and then the spherical field has no fall off. If that spherical field were to move into one of these, does it suddenly become dynamic? It does, but it's not really doing anything. And it immediately falls out of here. Although this is like, it's fun. This is weird. Look at that. Bing, 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 bing. I don't know. I'm not even quite sure what's going on. And maybe they are interconnected, like side to side, because those are acting a little bit like they are connected. But I don't know why that's not just falling away. I mean, I understand once it kind of enters the circle, it would get away from the circle. So maybe it needs to, maybe we need like an add on here. Oh, although that's probably going to be really difficult. Let's say, let's try adding a decay with maximum strength. I don't know if that will work. But once I make it white, because we have to actually hit it. Yeah, okay. Now once I move away, it stays. But yeah, see, it just flops down and connects to its neighbor. So these are still interconnected. Doink. Yeah, so there it is. They are all interconnected to each other. Although, I mean, it's kind of neat. I like what we're seeing there. But I was hoping each of those would behave independently. Although the fact that they're all connected is a logical behavior. I just didn't know what it did for sure. Hmm. Ba. Lasered, chill out, Lasered. What's happening? Um, there's another video that's playing. Ba, 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 ba. Is the Are you saying there's a video playing? What are you saying? There's some sort of sound going, like on Twitter or something? Is it still going? It's over. What was playing? Well, apologies. Well, if we can always pass the word on a little bit more. So if Crossfader's there, he has my phone number, and I don't see it right away. But like I've got two different monitors entirely. I'm not constantly checking the chat unless something's there. But apologies on that. I'm not sure what was playing. I'll have to go back and check it. Um, so yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. Um, Also, there's a couple other people in the chat who like Scott or something. I might give them my number just to send me a text if need be, um, because I've got my phone sitting right there for Crossfader, and Yadaglow can send me a message if something's going wrong. Um, anyway, these connections are all made in between each of them. So for this rig to work, it would actually have to be a single width or only. Yeah, so let's make the width segment 1 and tell the cloner to clone into the polygon center. So you see we've got a single line. So now I've got this line. Oh, and now the connections are all weird. This tag needs clear, select, invert. Oh, unless I have vertex. Yeah, I've got fields turned on, so it's remembering. Clear. Yeah, we'd have to. I don't know if I can copy these. I'm going to try copying them. Let's delete. Turn off fields. It does remember it, though. That's kind of unfortunate. Reset. Resets. Yeah, they're all locked in. I don't want to spend any more time on the cheese one. Like we could go and link two of these up, and now we just need to make a new selection tag because that one's broken. There, a selection tag, and now I could say invert, and now in the dynamics tag, this becomes our dynamic. So those are able to be dynamic. They're linked on the top and the bottom. And now if we were to go and turn on our fields, we've got that frozen, and we can paste those back in. Luckily, that kind of works. And now you can see I've got one line here. So that would mean if I were to go and touch this, why is it not? So you see how that got touched, and now it should be dynamically turned off. You need the right angle, but that should be dynamically turned off, but it's not turning off. So yeah, we're just gonna have to have that one dead end. Oh, they don't all work. Old one tutorial. Yeah, lasered. Yeah, I get it. It's a tough trick there, where it's like, how much attention should I pay to the Slack, where I'm constantly keeping an eye. If I'm constantly keeping an eye on that, it's like I'm talking, pausing, reading a bunch of messages, going back, talking. So it'd be a very kind of staccato, kind of not well flowing thing. Now, when there's a problem, I'm counting on people sending me a message to tell me there's a problem, so it pops up because if my phone buzzes, I definitely glance at that really quickly. But you guys are doing so much conversation here in the chat, which is great, which is what I want. I can't be constantly reading that, so it's kind of like a half. It's a tricky one where to do it one way would be have its limitations and its weirdnesses, and then to do it the other way could. Now it's unfortunate that there's some sort of audio playing in the background on something. I don't know what was playing it. It must have been some animation somewhere or something. I don't know what it was until I go back and review the video. So apologies for that, but I'm trying here. But yeah, if Crossfader is not kind of Crossfader's been really busy, so he hasn't been able to be in the chat and send me a message. So some of the other regulars that are here all the time, I can go and get them my phone number so they can send me a message. I think it's like the best of both worlds there. So in any case, let's go and jump on another question. Don't have video. Dennis is asking, no video, but it sounds simple. How would you draw a spline from a bunch of objects, clones for example, to a single object? Let's say 100 clones all connected to one null with a straight spline. Both have to be animatable, at least with clones. I mean, it's easy to say. A little more difficult to do an execution. For now, I might have something in the future to show you guys that might be able to do something like that. But let me think. Would there be any way of faking that? Let me think. Clone everything. Bunch of connections to one connection. Well, you don't want to copy something a million times, so that's no good. Even that would be, I mean, the only tool we really have in our toolbox here is the tracer object. And the tracer object, like I was thinking, like if you had a matrix object, like just picture a generic matrix in grid mode, and then you made a second one, and you told those like, hey, interconnect, and then the tracer object, but the tracer object wouldn't even connect those directly, and then you could shrink one, and then all the connections would be there, but you didn't make the initial connection. That's an interesting problem there. I mean, obviously code could do it, but that's a tricky one. Let me think about that some more for the future. Sulk, what do you got? I think, oh, it's something from Lee Griggs. And of course, he does crazy Maya stuff. Let me switch my screen here. Yeah, so yeah, he does amazing artwork. He's come up with so many like giant 3D trends just himself. So this one's a slightly old school. And I'm trying to remember how he even did it. Because man, those look amazing. I mean, at a certain point, like I just want to say, okay, these are X particles, and you let them trace around on the surface, and you know, like it's like, okay, you see these, so you have some flocking, and then it can travel up, but then it just does such a great flow on so many different parts. There's the surface deformer. I don't use that often enough. I'm curious if you could go and make a crazy collection of splines and just project them out onto the surface. So if we were to go into our content browser presets, or is that not default presets? Oh, it looks like I don't have the default library of models installed. Okay, well, it kind of stops the basic thing I was about to try and do there. Because I don't think a sphere is going to be a great example of what I want to do. But Inside. Okay, so I'd make a bunch of these, and then I would want it being very disparate. So I'm going to leave this really rough, or really not matching, but we've got our, there's the surface deformer. Yeah, so we could do surface deformer, and that's the surface, and then we can say initialize, projection, UV, yeah, ooh. Not great. Proportional, yeah. So there's that surface deformer, and then there is the shrink wrap deformer. That is actually more the one I was thinking of. So do that, and does it have to be editable? Or does it not work on an inside? Oh, that's disappointing if that's the case. I thought that that would work. I'm going to try applying this to a sphere instead. And it instantly works. So yeah, it works on a sphere, but not that. You can see here that the sphere is getting projected on to become the shape underneath it, which is pretty cool. It's actually doing a shockingly good job. So that's the sphere being turned kind of into a platonic. But that is not a bunch of splines, which is what I wanted it to do. Yeah, X particles, but that'd be really, there's so many layers on that. It's just a bad rapid fire question, so we're gonna skip that one for right now. In a episode where we're spending a little bit more time doing rapid fire or not doing rapid fire, that one might be a little bit more relevant. Do 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 do. I'm scrolling up the questions because you guys do a lot of really cool conversation. Actually, there's a lot of conversation going on today, which is really cool. I just know what links are for me. So we go up to a link from Michael Liu. How would you approach this 2D looking facial expression in Cinema 4D? 9 minutes in. Let's see what we got. I'm going to turn off the sound. Hopefully we don't get some sound overlapping. So 9 minutes in. First of all, what are we looking at here? Pocoyo's Summer Bundle, produced by Zinkia Entertainment SA. English, full episodes. It looks like, I'm assuming this is some sort of children's animation. And it's Zinkia Studio. So yeah, okay, cute. So let's jump to 9 minutes, which is what you're calling for. Yeah, these cutesy animations. Dude, these kind of animations are huge. People go nuts for them. I think you're probably referring to the whale. The squid there is great. Okay, I like the expressions they're doing here. It's pretty good. But yeah, okay. So really, the question here is how to do like a 2D sort of animation or 2D graphic animation on a 3D model. I'm trying to think if there's a very, very good answer to that. There's a lot of different potential techniques. I mean, first of all, you could just do that animation separately in After Effects, for one. That would be something that would be viable. The other would be doing stuff like what we almost just did, where we could project one shape onto another shape. So we don't have any of the models, unfortunately. I'll have to make sure I get those installed. Let me make a note of that right now. Apologies, but let me make a note. Otherwise, I will forget. So add R20 default models, just so we have them. And then yeah, because that'd be a lot easier or a lot more interesting. Now, granted, the characters and everything we just saw were really straightforward, so it wouldn't be difficult for us to model something up. I don't have anything particular in mind, but just like this, MG is going to round this out quite a bit, and then we can go and start stretching out individual polygons. Pull that out, grow this, pull it out, grow, pull it out, and then yeah, whatever. Let's just say this is like the head of a character. So we get D for extrude, pull that out. I for inner extrude, D for extrude, T for scale. And that's going to be the shoulders going out. So select all, MG for rounding it out. Let's round that out a little bit more. Cool. So let's say this is going to be like the face of some sort of character. I guess this would be a little less creepy if I hit another extrusion here. Pull that out. T for scale. T. Okay, so there we go. We got like the head of something. So this is the head of a character. We can right click and subdivide. We'll in fact even do a smooth subdivision on there. So there's a little bit more geometry. So there we go. So let's just say they had some cartoony flat eyeballs. So we could make a round rig. Let's go and make that white. And I can go and pull this forward. And that's supposed to be his eyeball. So we can pull this forward. And potentially, let's go and grab our shrink wrap deformer, drop that on the disk, and we'll drop in our cube, and boom, it's projecting it instantly onto that surface. Now that's the disk doing that, but we've got a couple options to push it back off again. We could, for one, grab our displace deformer and put the displace after the shrink wrap, and I'm going to just feed in a color white. So now it's pushing off just a little bit. It's pushing off however much I tell this to. So we probably don't need to go too far, maybe 1 or even 2 units, and that's enough for it to pop off that surface that little bit. And then as an alternative, this disc might have not been a flat disc, but it could have been a cylinder. So we could go and make a cylinder instead, and we'll rotate that one. That's another disc. What am I doing? Go away, disc. I wanted a cylinder. There we go. Let's make it a thickness of 3. We'll do Z plus. Pull that out, and now we've got that as the eyeball. Make that white, and let's steal the shrink wrap on that one. And now what would end up happening, well, first of all, it's going nuts. We might want to put that into a connect object, and then put the shrink wrap in the connect as well. And then we might need to move it so that it's actually over the surface. Ooh, that is not great. Along normals, do we need more subdivisions? Not great. Okay. Well, ignore that cylinder part. It was working great on the disk. What I was going to say is that we could add some thickness onto the disk after the fact. And in fact, even here, I don't know how subdivided it is, but yeah, we could add some extra subdivisions on there. That should help match that shape a little bit more overall. And as long as all this got subdivided in the end, that should work pretty well. But keep in mind that we could probably be creating a second disk that's supposed to be inside there. And Shift C, PSR, reset that. And let's make a black material. We got a black material in here. Drop that on the disk. Let's check the chat, make sure there's no emergencies going on. Seems okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of an ET vibe going on them. So we do that, T for scale, shrink that up. That is interesting. Why is the normal facing the wrong direction? Z minus? Is it supposed to be that kind of normal? Is it the normal of this object projecting? It could be. But yeah, so we can do that. So now you can see we've got that little eyeball popping on there, and then potentially we could say this one should displace outward more. Does that work like that? I thought it would. Because that's pushing both of them out. This one, I think, should push and that one out. Strange. Oh, maybe the shrink wrap is getting applied after the fact. I guess that might make sense. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that'd have to be. We'd want that to be separate rig then. I mean, this is not a great example because yeah, we could go and do the same rig and repeat it. So now you can see we've got 2 of those. And the point being is we could grab this eyeball, and it's really easy to go and pull this around. You can see it's going to be looking around and doing different details there. So it's kind of one type of protection by using geometry on top of the other piece of geometry. So, you know, that kind of thing can be fun. You know, you can be kind of cute. Like big eyes are nice and innocent. So yeah, something like this could potentially work. And especially if everything got put into a subdivision after the fact, that would work well. There's so many different potential ways. I mean, like I said, you could be doing that animation in After Effects and reapplying it here as purely as a material. stuff could be getting created and flattened on top of each other to become um, let me think. I mean, there's. I'm trying to think the best way I would do it. Like this is actually working pretty well. It's working better than I thought it would. You see, we do get some distortion on the eye as it moves up into the different areas, so that is a potential problem. Um, but it is matching it on the skin and the material really well. Um, at the same time, I mean, man, there's a bazillion different options as I think about it because this is kind of one. But then imagine this is going to be a weird one, but like, check this out. If we copy and paste, actually, he's weird. He's a weird little guy, but let's go ahead and save it. Weird little guy. If we copy and paste that entire thing into a new file, if we made a volume out of it, so if you put him in the volume builder and drop the volume builder into volume mesher, then now we've got that. But if our initial one, let's copy it. So now we've got the initial mesh and we got the secondary one. And if we were to intersect it with a circle of some kind, so let's say we pull this out like that. Now what I really want to do is put this original one into something that gives a thickness like a cloth surface. And let's go ahead and give it some thickness. So it's inflating out. And now if I put the sphere in there, we can say, I only want to see where these two are intersecting each other. So now I've actually just pushed that mesh out and then intersected it with a sphere. And now wherever that sphere goes is where our little eyeball is going to go. And then if we were to increase this, I mean, there's a horrible use of polygons, but stylistically, like this, anywhere I put this, we're going to be getting this perfect little round eyeball right on the surface. And then even beyond that, we could go further by adding a Cinema 4D character tag. So we can add a constraint tag. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So we can add a clamp and put that to clamp onto the surface. So we can say I want to link to the surface with 0 distance as nothing, but we could say as a norm or turn off normals, and we say as a normal. And now if I were to pull this around, you see I'm actually stuck to the surface. And if I were to keyframe this, it would actually be stuck to the surface. So this is a really weird technique, but you can see I'm clearly getting an eyeball out of it. And even along those lines, like that's one volume measure, but copy and paste again. Calculations on these would be insane. But I could scale that one up, make that one white, and then let's make this one the thickness thicker. And this sphere, I'm going to say this one should be not clamping, but locked to the PSR of the other one. So now, as I grab this one, it's stuck to the surface. And then this one is going to have to follow it. So now we've got both of them successfully moving around. But if we wanted to go further, we could put that into a group and move that. Maybe you can't put that into a group. It doesn't seem to... Oh, wait. It does... Oh, funky. Oh, intersect. Okay. I just had to acknowledge the null because I changed the hierarchy. But now you can see I've now anywhere I move the sphere, that little eyeball will move. But I could grab the sphere and independently move that one as well. So I could move that inside of it, and now that would be maintained. And I could even grab the other sphere and move it. Now that's maintaining that. So there's a lot of really weird things that we can do here. And even the sphere, like, these spheres, it would be simple to like scale them up, or it's like, oh, he's surprised, or super cute now. And then, I don't know. This is weird. This is a weird technique. I wouldn't have specifically thought of this, but there's so many little interesting things with it. Even this black pupil, that's working pretty well. If that was in a null, I'm going to put that into another null. And now I'm going to make sure that that says intersect. And now, if I were to make a cube, it's almost like, this is almost like a weird, like almost claymation vibe. But yeah, if I were to make a cube here, and just intersect it and put this into that same intersection, then look, it automatically is going to create this little mouth. And now just by moving this around, I'm getting this shape, and the shape will just automatically move and generate wherever I move that. And it's part of that same, as long as it's black, it's automatically part of that same volume. So this is weird, but I think it's pretty unique as well. Like you almost get like this claymation-y type of vibe. You wouldn't want to do that. That's weird. But yeah, by doing this, you can do that. And, even if you want him to talk, everything's in this null now. So I could do an Alt G, grab the hit L for axis and pull it back here. And now if I were to do two of those, turn off L for that. But now I could go like blah, 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 blah. But, that's using this cube, and there's kind of like those lips if we wanted to do it that way. But instead of that, I mean, it could be that this mouth is just this cube, and you could go like blah, 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 blah. Hi, hello. And then, man, it just goes on and on. This is actually pretty intriguing because I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. We grab the cylinder and put that over here. So now that becomes the mouth. Put that into that one null. So that's his mouth. It's almost like a Charlie Brown type of mouth. And then we say, go in here and turn on slice. So now we got our slices. So now we can say I want that like that and like that. So yeah, if we get this wedge going, yeah, pinch that way in like that. There we go. Now intersect, increase the radius. There we go. That's what I wanted. So now but if we were to animate these, we could actually have the mouth be opening and closing. I guess you want them to go down like the jaw. So like blah, 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 blah. I like the cube a little bit better. It's a little more stylish. But look, he's smiling, and it's just a cylinder intersecting. Like there's a lot of weird things here. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Not something I had specifically ever thought about, but I like it. The idea of these little intersections creating the blobs. Yeah, it just makes me want to keep layering them up. If we were to put a tube like because the volumes, at least even at this scale, are calculating so quickly. If we do a little radius here, pull that in, make it thinner, thicker, slice, turn that on, and then also put this in, then that should create that intersection. Pull this down. Okay, don't want to pull too far because you see those automatically blob into each other. I guess I'll pull that down and then move the entire eyeball down. He looks a little angry now. There we go. Don't want to be so angry. There we go. Look, he's happy. And then you can make him skeptical. And if you put a couple, now he's worried. A couple controls and rigs on here, and it would be pretty. I think you could do some pretty fun things just by moving these around. And like a couple controls and sliders, building a rig out of this. This would be weird and cool. And then even like I kind of like the low poly nature of it. We could go and put some smoothing on there, and of course you grab your volume builders and decrease it so that these would become a lot more detailed. And then if you want to kick yourself in the butt, you can put a smoothing in there, and it's going to smooth it all out. It's going to look a lot smoother. But of course it's going to be killing you on the refresh rate. So you can see that this is a lot slower now. But there's something here. There's something cute here. I like it. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious what you guys think about that one. It's weird. But let's save this as weird little guy number B. Let's see. You want to try and squeeze one last question in? Time to do the quick shout outs. Get your last question in there. We'll see which one we will tackle. I'm going to pop up here and say thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out. I couldn't do this without all the questions that you're answering. I'm going to try and get my number over to a couple of the other mods on Rocket Lasso so that if something happens, I can get a text so that it's not there. So that like Crossfader was kind of the person doing that for years, and now he's busy around the time that we're doing the stream. But just to make sure that can all work really well. Now, I want to do a big shout out to everybody who's currently supporting on Patreon. It's a really big help making it so that I can do these live streams and so that we can make some really cool tutorials. And there's one on the way I'm really excited about. I don't really want to give any hints until I've got it locked in, but it's coming. And then tomorrow is the bonus stream. So anybody who is at the technician tier is going to be able to participate in that, where we do cool, longer form projects. It's really cool. It's just really helpful. I also wanted to go and do a really big specific shout out to a Patreon supporter. I don't even know if they're hanging out, but I even made a special screen here. We've got our first Among the Stars follower on Patreon, and it's the Great Wanderer Productions, I think out of Berlin. They got really great work on their website. But that's a big help. They're the biggest supporters so far. I really appreciate that. But I want to go and get at least one more question in here if anybody's hanging out. So let's see. I am checking out the chat one more time. And what do we got? Let's see. Second one. People chatting with each other. Actually, Crossfader's got one. Let's check that one out. Switch the screen over. And let's click on this Behance gallery. It is the fabric font mockup. Whoa. Fabric font mockup. That is definitely what it is. It is GK Creative. GK Creative in the London, UK seems to be who put this together. So these are like quilts. These are like big sections of fabric. And there's all these really, really great wrinkles. What do we do with these? I mean, we could drop... these always go to three things. It goes to doing soft bodies, cloth simulations, and sculpting. Like it always ends up being those same three questions if you're going to start getting the kind of detailed cloth. Having said that, like what might actually be better would be something like playing with Marvelous Designer. Like I keep hearing about Marvelous Designer, about some of the great things it can do, especially if you're doing something with a still. Like it's absolutely incredible the stuff it can put together and the way it will pinch different things. And just create overlaps and really nice materials. So that's where I think that would work. I think my chat died over here. So I'm going to click over onto my window here and make sure this is still going. Oh yeah, the chat's still going here. So sorry, I had to scroll through the links. In fact, I'm going to try some of the other links because this one it's just really heavy duty. Honestly, it would just be inflating something a little bit and then dropping a rigid body on a soft body and then manually modeling in wrinkles. And that's going to be a really detailed, tedious one, so it wouldn't be good for a rapid fire, especially not with us already being over time. Let's see what we've got. A couple people are asking about this one. Behavna is or Havana, Behavana, Behavana. I think it's Behavana. I've been saying it must be an animation, not a still, which I appreciate your enthusiasm and your faith in me, but I'm not sure that that's a good use of our time there. Oh, and I was saying sulk, but it's more Saikal, or Saikal. I'm not sure. If you want to type in the phonetic pronunciation, in the other window I had, the I looked like an L. Apologies for that. Like we've done these kind of cloth things before, and they always end up being really tedious. But if a couple people are really enthusiastic about it, we can try and do a very quick version of it. I'm just not super confident we're going to get something crazy sexy here, because you just need so many dang subdivisions on things. Like I'm feeling like we need like this many subdivisions. So if we were to do something like that and then make a floor, because we need to be able to crash into something, let's go ahead and add a soft body tag to both of these. And honestly, soft bodies are the one that doesn't do that good of a job on them. Like the cloth is the one that does a really good overlap, but cloth it like intersects itself. But what I would do here, first of all, it's soft body. Let's go ahead and add on a little bit of pressure. So I'm going to add in, I don't know, 15%. And let's see what our playback speed is looking like. And I shouldn't hit play. So yeah, that's doing a fine job of inflating like a nice pillow. Actually, it's a very nice pillow shape. But I'd want the structure to be stronger. We'd allow it to bend and shear with the flexion and the damping. Let me make sure I have the right screen up. Okay, I do. Cool. Yeah, we'd want those to be up, and then let's see. Now it shouldn't explode nearly as much, hopefully. So yeah, that's going to start inflating. And now we need a letter. So let's go and make a motext because it saves us a couple of objects. And we'll just make a nice R. And let's make it a Futura R because it's the official font of Rocket Lasso. Let's get one that's a little more even. There we go. That's a nice looking one. I want this to run really quick. So let's set this to subdivided. 90 degrees on the angle, and let's increase our minimum length. So we're going to go nice and low poly on this thing. Let's go and tilt it over 90 degrees. And there we go. Now it's ready to go floop and get a nice little nap. Let's save it. Text out of cloth. Okay, let's right click and add a simulation rigid body. Shape is moving mesh. Okay, that should in theory be all we need to do. Scoot it over a little bit, and let's very carefully frame by frame forward as everything does its thing. Okay, so there's even the basics. It's inflating, and that's pushing down. Actually, it started exploding a little bit, so let's do fewer frames. So it's kind of inflating up. 2 frames in, seemed okay. Let's hide the visibility of the text, and already you can see that we got some limitations here. It looks really pinchy and kind of, I'm not even sure what's going on there, honestly. Let's go ahead and drop our bounce and friction all the way down. Try a couple more frames. And yeah, look how it's really having a lot of trouble with that surface. I know it's an Ngon, but that's real ugly. Now let's go on our text and make sure it's subdivided. So I'm going to go to caps and let's change it off of Ngon. So we'll do quads. Should give it something to work with. And honestly, maybe we'll do a couple extra subdivisions because that wasn't running too slow. So we'll do that so it's a little bit more even. All right. And let's add on a display tag, and we'll activate use, and we'll say lines so we can actually see through it without going too crazy. So yeah, look, see, these are like passing right through the surface. That's not great. Let's make sure it's being treated as a volume. So we'll go to caps and say create single object, and let's do it again. That's actually making a significant difference now that it thinks it's a volume. It's not just passing through a surface. So you can see now we're getting an indentation of the text, which is something. Man, that pressure is more than I thought it would be. Wait, there is no pressure. Oh, wait, that's not the right object. Pressure 15. I didn't think 15 was that high. So yeah, let's let that stretch and flop. Now even here, it's like, okay, now the pressure is counteracting it quite a bit, but I think I'd want to make that text a lot heavier. So we can go into mass, and I'm going to change it to a custom density instead of world density, and let's make it 5 times heavier. And do it again. And it should just make it so that it's going to be way harder for the cloth to push up on it, which means we should get a deeper indentation. Here you can see it's pushing it down a lot more. So, I mean, it's almost like, okay, cool. That's as far as we can take it. And as far as cloth is concerned, as you can see, we get this nice indentation. We have to make this editable and start sculpting. As is where I'd have to go with cinema at this stage. We're going to leave that one there. For that bit of technique, I want to see if we can get cloth to do anything a little bit better. It's going to be a little weirder too. But let's go ahead and delete our soft body off of there. And we're going to delete our I don't know if we need to delete our dynamics tag off of it or not, but we do need to turn this into a simulation cloth collider tag. And let's get rid of our bounce and friction. And now let's go to our cube, which unfortunately needs to be made editable. And let's add cloth on there. Now, one of the interesting simulation cloth. Something interesting is that cloth doesn't have. I lost my train of thought. Oh, cloth doesn't have intersection turned on by default. Cloth just kind of is cloth. Now, there is no inflation. There is self-repulsion. This is just going to flop on the ground, isn't it? Yeah. How do you inflate cloth? Or people are constantly increasing the size as a way of getting it to eat up. That's like a very popular technique in the last year, is like telling the entire object to get bigger, and then you can actually get some nice wrinkles out of it, which is pretty cool. The problem is that we need a lot of stiffness out of this thing. And you can only do that through iterations. So yeah, you can see that that is just like flooping out of control there. And if our layer falls in, it's already going to just collapse in on itself. And we could tell, we can go to dresser and dress a bunch of the points. So let's go and do a, what's the easiest way to grab the selection? I guess we can try, yeah, there. I can just do that. And I'm going to say, fix those points so those can't fall away, but now you see this whole thing's going to fall down. I guess we could invert gravity. I think it has its own personal gravity, of course, because these are unrelated dynamic systems. So let's go and give it a positive 9. I guess 10 is closer to it. And now it should go upward, so at least that's something. So, okay, that's working fine. Now I'm going to turn off the dynamics tag on this rectangle. I thought it'd be kind of, or on the text. I thought it'd be kind of fun if it falls in, but it's clearly causing problems. So I can hit play. Now you can see it's inflating upward. Whoa, I don't know what that was, but so now you can see that's inflating. Gravity's going up. It's pushing it up. So as that goes in, let's go and try and chill out a couple of the parameters. Let's go and do less iterations. We got our rubberiness and our flexion. Flexion can go low. Flexion is how much it can bend. I want it to be able to bend quite a bit, actually, so it can kind of go up inside these crevices. Gravity is crazy strong on those edges. Oh, do you know what that is? It's the entire thing turning inside out, which is absurd. We actually don't need the bottom side of this, which is funny, but yeah, let's get rid of it. We've got this outer loop. I can hold down Shift and do a UF selection on the top, grow my selection, UI delete. There we go. Now we just got that. I'm not sure if our fixed points are still fixed, so I'm going to click on show. And it looks like they're not. I'm going to select all, shrink, invert. So let's do that again. So that's Control or Command A, shrink UK, invert UI, and now I've got the outside. Fix those points, and now this should calculate faster. As you can see, it's all blowing upward because gravity's going up. That's fine. Forces, I think maybe some sort of friction would be good. I'm not sure which one that would be. Oh, drag. We got drag, which is nice. So let's go 15% on the drag because we don't need these going out of control. So there we go. That stuff goes up. Still gets a little twitchy over there, which is interesting. I wonder if that's a flexion. Ooh, definitely is the flexion. Yeah, increase the flexion. It chills out instantly. Bounce, friction, those are non-variables here. Stiffness, we can probably even go easier on the stiffness so that this can like inflate up inside the inside more. And now, I mean, the thing that could get interesting is if we let it inflate or get bigger, like get the size going larger. But I mean, it's still giving us a nice text outline, but it's not that different than what we were getting before. Now, it's colliding with this. Potentially we could, I'm not even sure. At the time of 0, we can grab this text and move it down so it's right there. Potentially we could keyframe something so it's going to like force these shapes in more. They're a really nice job of like shooting up inside there, but then it relaxes itself. I think it's actually getting pulled out from the outside, which is actually that's a little bizarre. I guess it's not bizarre. What's happening is we get this nice amount of cloth going on in there, but then this one starts having heavier friction and starts pulling that inside out. So I wonder if this is weird, but let's go to our dresser and I'm going to say, I'm going to rewind this one. Let's save it. And now let's save it immediately again as the next one, which is going to be C. And now let's hit play and let that go a couple frames in. And now it's kind of nice. It's all filling in these gaps and there's some wrinkles going. And I'm going to tell that to be the dress state. And I think that means that that's how we start out. So oh no, apparently not. Well, I'm glad I saved because hitting, initial. I should have set the initial. So I don't know what I just did. I'm going to revert to saved. Thank goodness I just saved it. And now let's go forward a few frames. Up, up, up. Yeah, I like that one. We go here. Initial state set. Now that's where we start. Rewind. We can continue from that point. And now, it does an okay job there. But now that that's our initial state, I wonder if we can continue to inflate some more. So if we were to say 135, and we can't give it too many frames because it's going to get out of control. And we'd probably need more subdivisions. But you can see we can inflate these more. And yeah, we can get more wrinkles going. So that's starting to become a little bit visually interesting. As far as like letting these things overlap just by inflating those. So if I, again, set that as the initial state, create a subdivision surface, throw it inside, then now we're going to get this subdivide. And now you see we do get some nice wrinkles going. So that's where this is where cloth has the advantage over soft bodies. The soft bodies do not give you wrinkles. Let's see. Yeah, so that's working. I mean, honestly, this is not bad. This is more than I thought we'd be able to do. So you can see we got our text that's overlapping. It's doing a fine job. We'd want to do some smoothing probably because you see we get some intersections. Cloth is not good at fixing those intersections. If we made it editable, we could fix those pretty well. So yeah, that's actually not bad. These wrinkles are okay. If we were to pop open sculpting now, we have a good basis in which to start smoothing and creating different wrinkles and different areas on that. So you know what? That's not bad. This is better than I thought we would do. We got a nice letter R kind of all fluffy in there by constantly creating more cloth and allowing that cloth to fill up the area. Now I am curious. Hadley just said that he's just tinkering with XP cloth and that got him to this point. Let me tear off the tab. So he just made this with XP cloth. So XP cloth might do some nice stuff as well. That is gravity pushing down on it, which would be perfectly the inverse of what we did with it coming up. But yeah, it looks like XP cloth is doing a fine job. There's some cute little wrinkles in there. There's not all the bunching up that I think we'd want, but that's pretty cool. So nice test over there on XP cloth. Not something I'm familiar with, and I don't want to spend time jumping into XP cloth right now when because I would just eat up a bunch of that time. But yeah, I guess just for fun, just because this is looking all right, why don't we give this a quick save as number D. And I think I can just delete the cloth tag off and it's permanent now. So yeah, there's just the permanent one. We pull it out of the subdivision tag. And let's try and do a little hint of sculpting. So I'm going to change my mode to sculpt. Bink, pop that up. And now we can subdivide. And now we've got that going. And now we can do things like grab our smoothing tool. And let's see if we can do things like fix. Yeah, see, we can fix these bad ones by doing little clicks until they straighten themselves out enough so they're not quite overlapping. So that by itself is actually doing a pretty good job of fixing these essentially impossible pinches. We get those nice sharp ones, but we can get rid of the overly extreme ones as much as we want to. Yeah, I'm actually quite happy with that. Pinch. Yeah, and that's just a very... Now the problem is both the advantage and disadvantage is now it's a very manual process of using sculpting tools. So we could go and grab the inflate, do some fun stuff here where we can grab particular areas like that and grab certain areas and let them become more of a wrinkle. But the main thing would be probably increasing the subdivision again and then doing things like, I don't know what pinch is going to do. Yeah, okay, so pinch, and then if we hit NB, we can see we can start drawing in some additional little pinchy areas there. pinch in various areas. But then grab the pull, probably. Yeah, the pull will push up and down. If I hold down control, it pushes down. Hold down shift as I click my middle mouse button as a button, and I can increase or decrease my radius, or I could click up and down and increase or decrease the pressure. So now by holding that control, I can push down. It's a little strong. Let's go easier on it. So yeah, we can start sculpting up. And let's turn on SSAO. It's not changing much, but yeah, we could start drawing in extra wrinkles. And honestly, I wouldn't even be too shy about like going decently overboard on these as you go, because it's really easy to grab the smoothing tool and erase them out. I wonder if you can do combo tools, because it'd be really great to have the pull and pinch at the same time, like pinch it in while pushing it down. That'd be really cool. I don't think you can, but that would be neat. Repeat. And then there's the amplify brush. That one's pretty cool. I think it just makes whatever it did do more of what it did. So yeah, oh yeah, look at that. These pinches, like putting the amplifying the pinches, really making them pop out. So yeah, so it just goes to like, now artistically we have the ability to grab things like the smoothing tool and increase, and if it's like, okay, we want to calm this area down. Like, look how simple it is to calm that area down. This line's still just bothering me. Get rid of that. This is too pinched. Get rid of that. So yeah, you can create areas of more interest or less by pushing this in and out. And sculpting overall. I don't have any great answers on sculpting. It's just not something I do very often. But, oh yeah, and there's also the knife. The knife is, yeah, look at the knife. The knife is great. And I'm pretty sure you can turn on like pen pressure here, right? Yeah, link pressure. So if we were using like a Wacom or a Cintiq, we could be having different pressure amounts, and that actually might go a really long way to like like doing thinner and smaller ones, like putting these in. But yeah, oh man, this knife tool is awesome. And even it's not like actually cutting; it almost is like a push and a pinch at the same time. So we are drawing in our wrinkles really easily here. Yeah, and I don't. And yeah, too much power, so a little easier. Yeah, even less power. Undo a few of those, and then you could even do it multiple times so you can get longer ones. Pinch them out. Yeah, so it's really fun. And I mean, I think we've essentially done this before in the past. This one's looking better. What does an anti-pinch look like? Oh, neat. Look, you can create these really sharp ridges pinching out. So if I hold down, if we made this bigger and I pull this down, we get this really sharp pinch on there. So that's really nice. Man, this knife tool is suddenly like my favorite sculpting tool. Yep. Yep. Pinchy, pinchy. Yeah, sculpting. Now, obviously, we just went way too far in a bunch of places, but a couple ticks with the smoothing, and it just calms those down so you can see the transition happen into them. We always grab our amplify and make them a little bit more intense in certain areas, and yeah, we get some pretty nice stuff there. So I think that will officially wrap this one up. We got a nice little Rocket Lasso R going. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save for the final one. Where E is a text out of cloth. Sculpt. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad we spent a couple minutes on that one. It is surprising and fun, but simultaneously frustrating, where like cloth is so old, but cloth does such a better job with this concept than soft bodies do, and soft bodies are better than cloth in like every way. So it's just crazy that that it worked better that way. Anyway, is there any other final little questions or anything that anybody has before we officially wrap this episode up, and we'll have completed another full Wednesday of Ask GSG. We're almost we're at 2.5 hours, so that's quite the thing. Geo sculpt tools fade over the link. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Salam is mentioning that you can turn it on so that the sculpt tools will fade out as you drag, which is a really good point. Like right there is making full strength tools, but you could make it so that you fade as you drag. Really, it would be turn on your Wacom or your Cintiq so you can actually get the pen pressure, because then it's like the best of all worlds. The fade out is like a fake of that, but it's still pretty cool. But yeah, really good point. Um, and then Zalam is talking about doing fake wrinkle textures procedurally. Um, let's go and pop up the screen there because it's worth seeing. So you're showing this, and then I'm wondering. Oh, so is this the compression? The wrinkles. I'm assuming you did the wrinkles via. Um, well, yeah, you're saying you did noise. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. You're saying you did noise in a shader, but I'm assuming that you did on this kind of tech. Oh, I hate that Windows does that. I'm assuming that you did something with the tension tag, so that you have the character tension tag, and the character tension tag makes it so if you squish something, it will create a vertex tag where it got squished, and then you can use that vertex tag to feed in some noise so that where it compressed, this happened. So you could potentially do the same thing here. In fact, I mean, it would be super insane, but we could take the original shape here, and we could probably even just use a smooth tool and smooth it out, use the original shape, and then morph into the new shape. And the tension tag could be like, hey, here's where you compressed, here's where you expanded. And then we could add additional effects based on that. Of course, noise doesn't follow the curvature of shapes like that, but it might stretch. So I don't know. There's potential there. But yeah, that's a really neat detail as well. So thanks for sharing that as well. I've lost my Windows when I wiggled it. Yeah, the tension tag. Oh, you didn't use a tension tag. You just did yours based on proximity or a proximal maybe. Yeah, the vertex maps are the way I would do that one. That's what I thought you were doing. And yeah, the pose morph would be a really cool way of transitioning into that kind of thing. I mean, we could just keep going and going and going and talking about this forever. But we could take this original shape, which is actually decently subdivided at this point. It's not as insane as I thought, but we could go and smooth this out to a single flat shape and then morph between the two different ones. And we could even use like a morph deformer and use a fall off and transition into the wrinkles. You know what? That sounds too fun for us not to do. So we're going to do that, even though I was just doing the wrap up anyway, because this should be really quick, actually. I know we might even be able to do the tension tag as an example as well. We just saved. If I delete the sculpting tag, if we delete the sculpting tag, we lose it. So I want to bake that down. So let's just, I don't forget how you bake it down. But if we throw that into a connect object, I know it'll work. So make that editable. Cool, we've got that baked down. And now I'm going to make a copy of it. And now this copy one, we don't need that. We don't need that. This duplicate rather. I think I just like clicking on sculpt because it pops the tools up quickly. Smoothing, smooth. I'm going to increase my radius and way increase my strength. Smooth, 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 smooth. All right, we're going to be losing a lot of the overall stuff. I'm not that worried about it. I just kind of wanted to talk about this conceptually. So there we go. I'll just do that. And then honestly, I guess I'd probably select this and do we not have coordinates? Coordinates. 0 on Y. A little more smoothing. Okay, cool. So that one's all flattened out. So we can go back to standard. And it's a little small now, so we get T for scale. Scale it up until we're about the same size. Probably even pull it down because I want the bottom to be the thing, so it's going to look like it's fluffing up. So I guess we'll just take that one, right click, add a character pose morph. The pose morph is going to be based off of the points. And now we can go and delete that pose and drag in this as a pose. I'm going to say yes as a relative target, which I think means, yeah, it's linked there directly. So that means we're seeing this one object here. If we go to animate mode, we can pull the slider. You can see we morph from one to the other. So right there, already pretty cool. Morph, 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 morph. But where it gets interesting is if we use um, the morph deformer. So we put the morph deformer in there, I think, and I put in this morph tag. And now we've got this morph here, but now we've got a fall off we can use. So if I make a linear fall off, there we go. Look at how cool that is. So we go like that, and it's transitioning in that way automatically. So much cooler. We can pinch this in, and we can transition the whole thing. But if you want to start making it interesting, of course, then we keyframe it. So we're going to have this keyframed coordinates. Let's just record X. And we're going to play through, give us some time, maybe like that. So we're going to transition all the way over to here. And we'll keyframe that. So that should do a nice little yoop. Now, let's go ahead and rewind all the way. Let's try putting our tension tag on just to see if it's actually working. So it's a character tension tag. And let's say we fix the tension right now. And we'll make a fold map and a stretch map. And we'll have to change the amount, but we hit play. We're in point mode, so we won't see anything. But as the stretch is up, we can click on this tag, and this is where it's stretched, and then here's where it compressed. But we have to go to our tension tag and calibrate it. So I'm going to lock that one. No, that's not true. I'm going to lock that one as I click on the tag. And I need to keep on increasing this amount until we get kind of a nice full range here, because that's where it's actually transitioning. And then now this one, yeah, this one is less so. Those are very few places actually shrunk. So those are the only shrinking places. So I'm going to leave it on that stretched out one. So this does give you like this map where we have stretched out and we have these details of where it got stretchy, and the edges obviously are the stretchiest part, but these other ones did. So we could add noises there potentially so that it would stretch more based on those. Or we could use that as a way of putting texture into certain areas. I just wanted to mention that as a detail. And then, of course, if we want to go real fun, then we make a jiggle deformer, and we jiggle after the morph. And let's just see what it does by default. So as this passes through, and yeah, see these awesome overlaps that we're getting. Now it's heavily subdivided, so you can see that jiggle is a little confused maybe on what to do. Go to Object tab. I'm going to say we can go easy on the drag, easy on the stiffness maybe. Yeah, it gets a little nuts. Yeah, that wrinkling effect is intense. I'd probably also put a smoothing on, especially there. So yeah, as the jiggle is giving us these overlaps, it's going to chill those out. Potentially that could also use some sort of fall up. You can see we get these extra effects going. And there's so many things that the jiggle could potentially do on top of it. Killing the stiffness and increasing the structure. Every time we change any one of these sliders, we're going to get a significantly different effect. Oh man, let's see, look at these insane wrinkles. And so I did like the smoothing, chilling it out, but we don't want to lose too much of the effects. So how much can we, yeah, I don't want it, yes, I don't want that much, but maybe like that, where it's like really kind of wrinkling up like some sort of inflating cloth. Now there is some overlap happening in a couple spots, but that's pretty cool. Where these are all flopping up, and that's just the jiggle deformer like working overtime to make some really neat effects. So pretty cool. Even that, there's so many things where you could like push things further. You guys have me on a roll here. This is always dangerous. Now we're getting to number 6F on this one. Sculpt. Morph. Just keep adding more words on here. We could add in the morph. We could exacerbate the morphing. We could make it more extreme. So, in fact, I'm gonna make it into a new file just to see it. So you can see we've got this fabric here, and what we could do is go into we could make a duplicate of that and then sculpt again. Sculpt brushes. Sculpt brushes there. Okay. So if we were to grab the smooth, then what we could do is increase the smooth and then start smoothing these wrinkles a little bit. So I'm not going overboard. I'm not trying to smooth everything out. I'm just kind of smoothing these wrinkles a little bit. You see how everything got smoothed? So now that I did that, if I were to hide our new unwrinkled one, no, that's not true. I want the unwrinkled one. So we've got the unwrinkled one. So this one is, cleaned up. If we had the character tag morph, and now we drag, morph points, and then I'm going to drag in this one, and now it's in as a relative reference. Now you can see that we are animating up to the wrinkled state, but now we've got essentially a calculation of the difference between the two. So first of all, we could go negative. So you can see I actually reverse the wrinkles. So now we've got like a completely, this is like the wrinkles, but opposite, which is also pretty cool looking. You can see it's a different kind of pinching going on everywhere. So a little bit of smoothing there, but a completely different look that we just kind of got for free. But then, of course, we can push up to 100, but we can go beyond 100. So we can start pushing that even further. So now every wrinkle is getting more extreme as well. Of course, there's limitations. It wouldn't be very long until a lot of these are running into each other. But it's just kind of fun to note that we could do that. Like if you're going to add in the wrinkles, we could keyframe some overlaps. So, we could, if it's almost like a natural kind of animation we could do where I could keyframe here and then hit play, and right around now we essentially get to 100%. We get to 100% and record again, but then we can play a little bit more and then overshoot quite a bit and then go forward and then undershoot. And it's almost like we can get that little oscillating wrinkle effect going. So yeah, and then eventually chill it at 100. This might look terrible, but you can see we inflate, and then we get that little bit of a wiggle on the end. I didn't smooth these out as much as I should have. Like all these should be spread out more. And then but I mean, it's almost like that's almost what the jiggle is doing for us for free. So that part might be redundant, but I do like those negative wrinkles. That is pretty cool. But yeah, there's a lot of the morph tag. If you think of the morph as a way of extracting differences between models, it actually makes it so there's a lot of cool possibilities just inside of that context. But this, hide that one. This is pretty cool and weird and crazy. Yeah, I like it. I like it. All right, guys and gals. I think it is officially Jake says EJ gets a nickel every time I use a jiggle deformer. You don't make up the rules. Well, if that's true, there's a lot of things that I did that no one else is allowed to do. I'll take that deal any day. If I'm the first one to have introduced something, I'll take that deal. No one else can use it unless I get a nickel. So that was super fun. We got to tackle a whole bunch of different ones. Really fun questions. Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully next week we can. I'll have I'll be able to get a message more quickly if there's a problem of some sort. You can, Thanks everybody who made it all the way through. I'll see everybody for the bonus live stream tomorrow if you're in the technician channel. And thanks everybody for supporting on Patreon, all that good stuff. And that should wrap this one up. So I will see everybody next week. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye. I gotta pop the window up, window up. Here we go, here we go. Click the button. Bye bye.